Yun Shujo felt that the interaction between the old couple was very interesting. The old man was wise but foolish, while the old lady was sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. This kind of bland happiness was very enviable. Yun Shujo regained her senses and heard the person on the stage say, "I heard that the Nameless Sword sect has 2 sword-forging masters. I wonder if there are any swords that are better than the Wind Shadow sword in my hand?" Elder Duanmu and Elder Dongfang were both in the VIP seats. They frowned when they heard this. This was the first time they had encountered such a situation. The two of them wanted to ignore it, but they did not expect that the person on the stage would speak more and more arrogantly and harshly. His words implied that Elder Duanmu and Elder Dongfang were cowards. Elder Duanmu had a bad temper to begin with, so how could he endure it? He immediately left the VIP seats and went onto the high platform. He didn't say anything. He just took out a sword that glowed with a cold light from his storage ring. The expression of the person who had been clamoring earlier changed slightly. He was afraid of comparing goods. The Moon Shadow sword in his hand was not bad, but it was not as good as the sword in Elder Duanmu's hand. Elder Duanmu snorted. Just as he was about to leave the stage, the person took out another sword and said contemptuously, "The Moon Shadow sword I used just now was just for fun. This blood-devouring sword is what I'm proud of." Everyone's gaze fell on the blood-devouring sword in the man's hand, especially Elder Duanmu, who was on the stage. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The blood-devouring sword was as thin as paper, and the grooves on its body were faintly red. Elder Duanmu could even feel the killing intent coming from it. Elder Duanmu knew that he had lost. If the thousand-cleaving sword had not been stolen, he might have been able to compete with the blood-devouring sword. Was he going to admit defeat just like that? Please visit P-alpha-1. MHE represented the reputation of the Nameless Sword sect. If he admitted defeat, how would the reputation of the sect be preserved? The layman watched the show, but the experts knew the ropes. Elder Dongfang's expression changed as well. He had a pretty good sword in his hand, but if they were to compete, it could not be compared to the blood-devouring sword in that person's hand. What was the background of this person? Logically speaking, he knew all of the reputable sword forgers in the northern continent. Why would such a person suddenly appear? P-alpha-1. Seeing that Elder Duanmu remained silent, the person on the stage suddenly raised his sword and stabbed at Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu subconsciously picked up the sword in his hand to resist, and with a crack. The sword in Elder Duanmu's hand was actually cut in half by that person. Then, that person abruptly retreated and leaped out of Elder Duanmu's attack range. With a fake smile, he said, "Elder Duanmu, please forgive me for my offense. However, I just want to verify whose sword is better between the 2 swords. Now that the winner has been decided, please go back." Elder Duanmu's face turned red and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. As the saying goes, the sword is with the person, and the broken sword is the biggest insult to the sword practitioner. In terms of spiritual power, that person was far from being Elder Duanmu's match. However, under the watchful eyes of the public, if Elder Duanmu killed him, it was inevitable that he would leave something to talk about. However, if he did nothing, he really could not swallow his anger. Yun Shujo, who was standing at the wonton stall to watch the commotion, said to the old couple, "Elders, I'll go up and take care of that frog at the bottom of the well. I'll come back and chat with you guys later." The old man and the old lady looked at each other. Was this little girl crazy? Before the old couple could say anything, Yun Shujo had already run far away. Seeing that there was a crowded crowd in front of them, this fellow shouted in a clear voice, "Make way! Make way! Make way! I have a peerless sword to crush that shameless frog at the bottom of the well." Hearing that, the crowd made a path for this fellow. However, there was doubt in their eyes. Even Elder Duanmu's treasured sword had been cut off by that person. What kind of treasured sword could she have? Yun Shujo passed through the crowd and leaped onto the high platform. She said to Elder Duanmu with a look of disdain, "Elder Duanmu, you are good in everything, but you are too soft-hearted. Are you afraid of striking this frog at the bottom of the well? Is that why you didn't take out your good stuff? Don't you know that being merciful to your enemy is the greatest cruelty to yourself? Really, you should return to the VIP seats first. The gadgets you gave me previously are enough to torture him to death. I will soon let him know that he has overestimated himself. Elder Duanmu was dumbfounded. Since when did he give her gadgets? How could she compare with him? However, he thought that this little girl was full of bad ideas. Perhaps there was really a way, so he forced himself to calm down and replied before jumping off the high platform. After Elder Duanmu left, Yun Chujio looked at the middle-aged man and curled her lips. You don't look like a good person. Otherwise, why didn't you tell us your name? Are you feeling guilty? The man snorted coldly. Fine, I won't change my surname. He Hongchuan, cut the crap. Show us your sword. He Hongchuan firmly believed that Yun Chujio did not have any treasure sword. After all, even Elder Duanmu did not have one. How could a little girl like her have any treasure sword? Yun Chujio smiled contemptuously and said, before I show my sword, I'll let everyone have a look at something good. Everyone, please take a look. Everyone stared with wide eyes. They saw Yun Chujio take out a big black wok. The old man who sold wontons staggered and almost fell to the ground. If this big black wok was used to cook wontons, it would be fine, but if he went up to participate in the sword evaluation, wouldn't that be fooling around? Please visit P-alpha-1 Co, and the people below also started to jeer. They felt that Yun Chujio was messing around, and He Hongchuan had a disdainful look on his face. When the crowd's discussion quieted down, Yun Chujio said with a smile, don't look down on this big black wok of mine. A few people who know what's going on will come up and see what's going on. Some people who liked to join in the fun immediately jumped onto the high platform and took a closer look at the big black pot. They immediately exclaimed, This big black pot has actually been repaired with 1,000-year black iron? Isn't this too wasteful? 1,000-year black iron is such a good material, but it's actually used to repair this broken pot? That's right, this is simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Yun Chujio said nonchalantly, in our nameless sword sect, the 1,000-year black iron is only good enough to repair pots and pans. Therefore, Elder Duanmu intentionally let He Hongchuan off just now. Yun Chujio's words caused an uproar. Master Ouyang was dumbfounded. When did their nameless sword sect become so rich? How did he, the sect master, not know about this? P-alpha-alpha no one. Oh sure enough, after He Hongchuan was stunned for a moment, he sneered and said, what does this mean? Don't talk about him. This is the sword grading assembly. What's the use of having a big black pot? Yun Chujio said with a smile, of course it's useful. You don't know, but Elder Duanmu saw that I'm smart and cute, so not only did he help me fix this big black pot, but he also helped me forge a peerless sword. As Yun Chujio spoke, she took out the best product that every household must have, a large kitchen knife. The crowd below was in an uproar again. Could this little girl be a handyman in the nameless sword sect's kitchen? Why is it either a pot or a kitchen knife? I know her. She's that Yun Chujio, the southern continent's female emperor of Fenghua. I heard that she made a great contribution in Ghost City a few days ago. Ah, so she's Yun Chujio. She's not bad looking, but is there something wrong with her brain? This is a sword grading competition, what's wrong with her using a big kitchen knife? He Hongchuan's face was full of contempt. It's a pot and a kitchen knife. Do you think this is a competition between chefs? The nameless sword sect actually reduced themselves to using a kitchen knife as a treasure sword. This is really an eye-opener. Yun Chujio said with the air of an expert, it's not right for you to say that. As long as there is a sword in your heart, anything in your hand can be a sword. Let alone a kitchen knife, even a tree branch can be a sword. Don't tell me that you don't even know the most basic swordsmanship, you idiot. He Hongchuan was choked by He Xinjia's rebuke and said angrily, well, since you're determined to compete with me, then let's compete. As He Hongchuan said that, he stabbed his sword towards Yun Shujiu. His thoughts could be said to be vicious. Although he said that he was only testing the sword, the bloodthirsty sword in his hand was aimed at Yun Shujiu's throat. Yun Shujiu's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. Old man Duanmu was good to her. This person had humiliated old man Duanmu just now. She originally only wanted to teach him a lesson. She didn't expect that he actually had the intention to kill her. In that case, go to hell. Seeing that the sword in He Hongchuan's hand was about to reach her, Yun Shujiu took the large kitchen knife to block the bloodthirsty sword. Please visit P-alpha-1, Co. He Hongchuan's eyes flashed with a trace of viciousness. He was certain that Yun Shujiu's large kitchen knife would break. When that happened, he would pretend to accidentally kill this bitch. Those people would not be able to do anything to him. Who would have thought that when the bloodthirsty sword and the large kitchen knife collided, the large kitchen knife would be fine? However, the bloodthirsty sword in He Hongchuan's hand curled its blade. He Hongchuan had never dreamed that this would happen. For a moment, he was stunned, but the big kitchen knife in Yun Shujiu's hand was still slashing towards his neck. He Hongchuan subconsciously used the blood-devouring sword to resist, and the blood-devouring sword broke with a sound. However, Yun Shujiu did not retract her big kitchen knife, and directly cut off He Hongchuan's neck with the force. He Hongchuan's body fell to the ground with a plop, and the half of the blood-devouring sword in his hand also fell to the ground with a bang. Yun Shujiu held the bloody kitchen knife and said to He Hongchuan's body, "Hey, I thought your blood-devouring sword was very powerful, but it failed to restrain its power. I'm sorry. Have a safe journey. See you out." P-alpha-1. On one hand, the audience was shocked that the kitchen knife in Yun Shujiu's hand had broken the blood-devouring sword, and on the other hand, they were shocked by He Xinjia's ruthlessness. This little girl looked kind and harmless, but they did not expect her to use a killing move. Wasn't this too ruthless? However, there were also people who could tell that He Hongchuan already had the intention to kill, so he had brought this upon himself. At this moment, Yun Shujiu said to the crowd below the stage, "Our nameless sword sect has a motto. If people don't attack me, I won't attack them. If people attack me, they'll take their dog life." Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this, especially Master Ouyang. He thought to himself, why didn't he know about this ancestral motto? If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, they'll take their dog lives. The first 3 sentences were decent, but why was the last sentence so off-key? After Yun Shujiu finished her harsh words, she strolled down the high platform. This time, she didn't have to shout, so everyone gave her a path. What a joke. They didn't dare to not make a path for her. This fellow was still carrying that big bloody kitchen knife. The host looked at Yun Shujiu's elegant back with a dumbfounded expression. How did this sword-tasting turn into killing? He looked at Island Master Qi and the others in the VIP seats. Was this matter going to end like this? Just kill her? Island Master Qi and the others didn't say anything. With their cultivation, they could naturally tell that He Hongchuan was the first to have the intention to kill. He deserved to die. The leader of the 9 pavilions this time was an elder surnamed Zhu. His eyes flickered a few times and he said with a smile, "The Nameless Sword sect is really impressive. An inner sect disciple is so tyrannical. It's really an eye-opener." Master Ouyang snorted coldly. Yun Shujiu was just defending herself. How can she be impressive? Let alone tyrannical. P-alpha-1. Ouyang Shujiu swaggered back to the wonton stall. The old couple no longer had their previous calmness. Their legs were still trembling when they looked at them carefully. Yun Shujiu could not help but laugh. "Old man, I am not a demon who kills people. Why are you so afraid of me? Come, let's continue talking." The old man and old lady were about to cry. "Aren't you a demon that kills people? You just killed one person, all right?" Although there were deaths and injuries in the previous sword technique conference, it was usually the later competitions that had occasional failures. However, This was the first time someone had died in the sword technique conference. Please visit P-alpha-alpha-1. In particular, this little girl gave people the impression that she was a naive and innocent little girl. Who would have thought that she would become a female demon that kills people in the blink of an eye? The old man said dryly, "Aunt, little fairy, please have a seat. We are going to make wontons." Yun Shujo could not help but roll her eyes. Well, it seemed that she was really scared. Otherwise, she would not have turned from a little girl to a little fairy. She scooped a bowl of wonton soup herself and drank it slowly. The old couple saw that there was nothing unusual about her, so they relaxed a little and continued to make wontons. Although there was such an interlude in the sword tasting competition on the stage, it still went on. However, everyone was a little dispirited. After all, they were used to eating big fish and big meat, so who would be interested in plain porridge and small dishes? When it was close to noon, there were more customers at the snack stall. Only then did Yun Shujo get up and prepare to leave. Although the old couple still had lingering fears, the old man still asked Yun Shujo to come over when she was free. Yun Shujo smiled and her heart suddenly warmed up. Sometimes, a kindness from a stranger often made people feel even warmer. Not long after Yun Shujo walked out, Chu Feng came over. "Junior sister Yun, you were too awesome on the stage. You were really amazing." Yun Shujo couldn't be bothered with this pervert. She found an empty space, took out a recliner, and lay down on it. She closed her eyes to rest. Chu Feng rubbed his hands and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Junior sister Yun, you are extremely intelligent, you have unparalleled wisdom, you are beautiful and intelligent, you are devastatingly beautiful, you are peerless, speak English. Can you think of a way for me to meet her?" Chu Feng said with a red face. Yun Shujo had already guessed Chu Feng's intentions. Seeing that he was at a loss and wished that he could find a hole to hide in, she did not have the heart to tease him anymore. She said with a smile, "It's a small matter. Follow me." Chu Feng's eyes immediately lit up. He rubbed his hands and could not help but thank her, "Junior sister Yun, thank you very much." Yun Shujo did not reply. She brought Chu Feng to the VIP seats. The VIP seats had special people to deliver food. There was no need to go to those shops and squeeze with others. At this moment, everyone was having lunch. Chu Feng saw Yun Shujo bringing him to the direction of Island Master Chi in a carefree manner. He immediately panicked, "Junior sister Yun, where are you taking me?" Yun Shujo chuckled. "Naturally, I'm going to see Little Moon." "But, Island Master Chi," Yun Shujo glanced at him. "What's wrong with Island Master Chi? Can he eat you or kill you? Are you so afraid of him? There are so many people here. What else can he do even if he's not happy? The braver ones will starve to death. Are you going or not?" Chu Feng was rendered speechless. Although he was a little timid, he still followed behind Yun Shujo. Yun Shujo was secretly happy. Indeed, the power of love was very great. The two of them soon arrived at the VIP area. Yun Shujo walked in front of Island Master Chi and said with a smile, "Island Master Chi, long time no see. This junior sends his regards to you." Although Island Master Chi had changed his opinion of Yun Shujo a little because of the 6-star Dark Spirit Stone, he still disliked her, not to mention Chu Feng, who was coveting his precious disciple. However, he would never hit a smiling person. Moreover, he could not go too far in front of so many people. Therefore, he nodded and did not say anything. Seeing the situation, Yun Shujo said with a smile, "Island Master Chi, I haven't talked to Little Moon for a long time. I'm going to take her for a walk. You won't object, right?" Before Island Master Chi could say anything, Hei Shinjo continued, "I guessed that you would agree. Why would an amiable elder like you stop our little sisters from whispering? Little Moon, what are you still standing there for? Come on, let's go for a walk, please visit P-alpha-alpha-1. Island Master Chi's nose nearly went crooked from anger. He didn't agree at all right? She was talking to herself, but she had blocked her words. He couldn't possibly slap his own face, right? When he came back to his senses, he only saw the backs of the three little ones, especially Chu Feng, who was so close to his precious disciple. He was simply asking for a beating. Island Master Chi was gnashing his teeth in hatred. Chu Feng was simply too beautiful. His little heart was like a happy little rabbit, constantly fluttering. He Xinjiu was extremely angry, but the corners of Xiao Yu's mouth curled up slightly. Clearly, she was very satisfied with Chu Feng saying that she was prettier than He Xinjiu. He Xinjiu was so angry. Rho Alpha D Alpha and knew, this fellow couldn't be bothered to look at their affectionate little eyes. He snorted coldly, a pair of ingrates, scram to the side and don't loiter in front of my eyes. Chu Feng was now filled with affection and he treated Yun Chujia's words as a breeze as he obediently accompanied Xiao Yu to the side to talk. He Xinjiu felt stifled as she looked at their backs. She wasn't really angry, but she thought of her ungrateful fiancé. Chu Feng was the perfect match for a boyfriend, all right? Fawning over her sweetheart in front of her in all sorts of ways, but what about her ungrateful gigolo? She would always be as calm as an old well when she had nothing to do. Damn it, this time, she would definitely make him suffer. The old man lay on the recliner and rested for a while in a huff. When the sword tasting session started again in the afternoon, he strolled to the wonton stall. The old couple had most likely adjusted their mood, so they were a little more relaxed than in the morning. They began to chat casually with Yun Chujiu. The old man saw that Yun Chujiu was no different from before, so he was not so reserved. He even asked Yun Chujiu to take out the big black pot to open his eyes. Yun Chujiu did not pretend and immediately took out the big black pot. The old man looked at it and clicked his tongue in wonder. This 1,000-year-old black iron pot is really different. It looks very sturdy. I think the wonton effect will be good if you use this pot. The old lady pinched him. You haven't shut your mouth for a whole day. How can the little fairy's pot be used to cook wontons? Hurry up and get to work. The old man was not angry after being scolded. He chuckled and began to cook wontons. Yun Chujiu said with a smile, this pot was originally used for cooking. Why can't I cook wontons? Please visit P Alpha Alpha -1. This fellow was also bored. He actually took down the original pot and put his big black pot on the fire. The old lady quickly stopped him, but the old man was happily washing the pot and adding water. Clearly, he wanted to see how different a 1,000-year-old black iron pot was from an ordinary pot. However, the three of them were soon dumbfounded. Because even though the fire below was very hot, the water in the big black pot did not change at all, let alone boil. The three of them looked at each other in dismay. In the end, the old man said, Little fairy, your pot is most likely extraordinary. You'd better not waste it. He Xinjiu was also dumbfounded. It was just an ordinary pot to begin with. Could it be that it had turned into a spirit after being repaired with 1,000-year-old black iron? Although the old man was very surprised, he said with a smile on his face, I guess this thing is in a bad mood today, so it's in a bad mood. The old man, the old lady, the old man was very sensible. He did not talk about the big black pot anymore. Instead, he told He Xinjiu some interesting stories about the previous sword technique conference, which He Xinjiu listened to with great interest. That night, after Yun Chujiu returned to the inn, the first thing she did was to take out the big black pot and study it. The old man even bared his teeth and dripped a drop of blood on the big black pot, but there was no reaction. He Xinjiu's joy instantly turned into embarrassment and anger. Damn it, she thought it was some treasure, but now it looked like it was just a broken pot. This fellow put away the big black pot in a bad mood and then threw this matter to the back of his mind. The next day, the second part of the sword technique conference lecture began. This lecture was not about cultivation methods, but sword techniques. Usually, it was explained by the people from the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island. After all, these two sects in the northern continent were among the best in sword techniques. Of course, they would not be so foolish as to explain their sect's top-secret sword techniques to everyone. They would only choose some simple sword techniques. Even so, the explanations of these mighty figures would enlighten some itinerant cultivators. After the explanations, they could ask questions and the mighty figures would patiently answer them. Therefore, the number of people who came the next day was much more than the first day. Hei Shinjo still went to the old couple's wonton stall to hide. The old couple was happy to have someone to talk to them, and they got along very well. At this time, the elders of the Nameless Sword sect were already on the high platform, giving a speech that was easy to understand. Some of the itinerant cultivators below could not help but nod. The old man smiled and said, "Every year at the Sword Technique Conference, the speeches of your sect and the Flying Flower Island are very popular. This is the foundation of a large sect." Yun Shujo humbly exchanged a few words with the old man. The old man thought that the Nameless Sword sect was not bad. Although there were some troubling matters, it still provided her with protection. As far as she was able, she would naturally do her best to protect the reputation of the sect. After the elder of the Nameless Sword sect finished his explanation, Elder Jia of the Flying Flower Island continued to explain. Yun Shujo had a good impression of this Elder Jia. When they were in Ghost City, when Island Master Qi and Elder Duanmu had conflicts, it was this Elder Jia who mediated. After Elder Jia finished his explanation, he began to patiently answer everyone's questions. At this moment, a sharp voice said, "Humph. Forget it. The so-called speeches of your Flying Flower Island and the Nameless Sword sect are nothing more than fishing for fame. What kind of bullshit are they talking about? Please visit P-alpha-1. Ma." Soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes turned to look at the person who spoke. They saw that it was an old man with a pair of triangular eyes that flickered with a cold light. San Jiaoyan. Although Elder Jia was very displeased in his heart, he did not say anything and intended to ignore this person. After all, there was no need to delay the progress of the Sword Technique Conference for such a thing. Rho Alpha D Alpha N Nu, however, it's also true. If I had to say it, the sword techniques of your two sects are also mediocre sword techniques. They are not worth mentioning at all. No matter how well-mannered Elder Jia was, he could not stand it anymore. He said coldly, "Who are you? What are your motives for spouting nonsense here?" That person sneered and said, "Don't bother about who I am. I'm telling the truth. Everyone, do you think what I said makes sense? Their Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island are just treating everyone as fools." Soon, someone chimed in, "That's right. When you put it that way, it's true. Every time you talk about sword techniques, it's very ordinary. You even boast that you're from a famous sect. How embarrassing. Right, every time you answer questions, you avoid the important points and make light of them. You even say that you'll naturally understand it when your cultivation is higher. Isn't that nonsense? If you don't want to give a real speech, then say it out loud. You're fooling people with those flowery postures. You're really treating us as fools. Forget it, let's stop talking. How can we compete with sects like the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island?" Whether it was Elder Jia on the stage or Island Master Qi and Master Ouyang in the VIP seats, all of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Well, no matter who was being pointed at and scolded, they wouldn't have a good expression. However, they couldn't do anything about it. Otherwise, it would confirm their reputation of using their power to bully others. Elder Jia thought that these people would give up after a few words, so he just pretended not to hear it. Who would have thought that more and more people would say sarcastic words, and it would be more and more unpleasant to hear? The situation had already gone out of control. Although Hei Shinjo, who was sitting at the wonton stall, had a good impression of Elder Jia, it was not to the point where she stood up for him. Therefore, even though her small face was a little gloomy, She had no intention of stepping up to the stage to help him out. At this moment, the old man from the beginning pointed his finger at her again. Everyone, these big sects are going too far. Let's not talk about what happened yesterday. That he Hongchuan only stole the limelight from the Nameless Sword sect, but he was killed by that Yun Chuzhou. What kind of unreasonable behavior was this? What kind of vicious heart was this? Their Nameless Sword sect would never allow others to be stronger than them. Once there was someone stronger than them, they would use all sorts of reasons to kill them. If that Yun Chuzhou was killed by He Hongchuan yesterday, would the Nameless Sword sect pretend that nothing had happened? They are relying on the strong to bully the weak. They disregard human lives. As soon as the old man's words left his mouth, many people who thought that they were righteous immediately chimed in. You're right. I wanted to say it yesterday. That Yun Chuzhou is too vicious. Isn't it just a contest of swords? She actually killed He Hongchuan. She's too vicious at such a young age. Also, what ancestral teachings she said are even more unreasonable. If someone offends me, I'll take his dog life? Does she treat everyone else like dogs? I heard that Yun Chuzhou used to be the southern continent's female emperor of Zephyr. A girl actually became some female emperor. One look and you can tell that she's not a decent person. She might have done some shameless things in private. As these words fell into He Xinjia's ears, the killing intent on He Xinjia's body became more and more intense. The old couple was trembling so much that they were like fallen leaves in the wind. Please visit P-alpha-1. If she could endure being ridiculed like this, then she would not be He Xinjiu. Yun Chuzhou stood up and was about to leave when the old man asked with concern, Little fairy, what are you going to do? Yun Chuzhou restrained the killing intent on her body and said to the old couple, the two of you help me cook a bowl of wontons. Leave me to eat when I come back. I'll go and talk to the trash. I'll be right back. The corners of Yun Chuzhia's mouth curled up. In the book, there was a story about warm wine beheading Hua Xiong. Today, she would have a hot wonton torturing the crowd. P-alpha-alpha no one. Oh, at this moment, someone saw Yun Chuzhou. Immediately, everyone's gaze fell on Yun Chuzhou. There were also some people who used malicious language to curse. There were even some who threatened to kill the people. Master Ouyang and the others in the VIP seats had a change in expression. They immediately ordered the Nameless Sword sect's disciples to protect Yun Chuzhou, so that she wouldn't really be beaten up by the crowd. They also had some complaints in their hearts. Why was she joining in the fun at this time? Wasn't she deliberately looking for trouble? Chu Feng and Xiao Yu were the first to arrive in front of Yun Chuzhou. Xiao Yu said in a bad mood, Where are you going? Follow me to the VIP seats and sit down. Yun Chuzhou faintly smiled. What are you going to the VIP seats for? I have a clear conscience, so there's naturally no need to hide. I want to see who dares to touch me. Yun Chuzhou took out a large kitchen knife as she spoke, then, she pointed at the person who was shouting the loudest and said, You, right, it's you. Didn't you want to beat me up? Come, let's spar. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, you'll be a turtle bastard. The crowd clearly did not expect Yun Chuzhou to be so arrogant at this point in time. For a moment, it became much quieter. Although the person pointed at by Yun Chuzhou was a little timid, Yun Chuzhou did not dare to do anything to him under the watchful eyes of the crowd. She said arrogantly, It's not that I don't dare to accept the challenge, it's just that I don't want to fight with you. You vicious bitch, sooner or later someone will take care of you. Yun Chuzhou laughed lightly and said, Get out of the way. I'll have a good talk with him. These bystanders were like grass on the fence. They had been cursing and shouting together. If they really got serious, they would all move back. What a joke. This Yun Chuzhou killed people just because she said so. If she were to slash them, how could they argue? Therefore, the crowd made a path. Yun Chuzhou walked in front of the man with a large kitchen knife. Yun Shujo sized up the man and said, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Apologize right now and I'll pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, I'll bleed you to clear your head." When the man saw that Yun Shujo was serious, he immediately became a little timid. However, he still felt that Yun Shujo would not make a move, so he shouted, "Yun Shujo, don't think that you're so great just because you're a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. Who do you think you are?" Before he could finish his words, Yun Shuji's large kitchen knife was placed on his neck. This person was just an itinerant cultivator. Even if Yun Shujo was just a small fry in the Nameless Sword sect, it was still effortless for her to deal with him. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu, man was no longer as arrogant as before. He thought that a super sect like the Nameless Sword sect would definitely cherish their feathers and have a lot of scruples. Who would have thought that Yun Shujo was a fucking female bandit? While he was hesitating, Yun Shuji's kitchen knife cut his neck again. The man quickly said, "Apologize, apologize, I apologize. I was talking nonsense. I'm sorry, please visit P Alpha Alpha -1. Yun Shujo snorted coldly and let go of the man. He was just a Tom, Dick, and Harry. Her target was not him, she just wanted to take care of him. With this incident, the people who were shouting earlier immediately quieted down. However, there were still some people who were shouting. Yun Shujo glanced at them and did not say anything. Instead, she walked towards the old man with triangular eyes who had fanned the flames previously, Sanjiaoyan. The old man with triangular eyes was clearly much calmer than the person from before, his face was filled with ridicule. Yun Shujo walked in front of him and said indifferently, "This hypocrite, you actually have a belly full of big principles. Why don't we go on stage and talk about it?" Xiao Yu, who was following behind Yun Shujo, couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hypocrite? This trash's mouth was really sarcastic. The triangular-eyed old man glanced at Yun Shujo with a gloomy expression and sneered, "This is also good. It's just nice to let the people of the world see the true colors of the so-called famous sects like Sanjiaoyan." The crowd automatically opened a path, and Yun Shujo and the triangular-eyed old man jumped onto the high platform one after the other. Elder Jia did not know what Yun Shujo was up to. He looked at Yun Shujo with an inquisitive look. Yun Shujo took out a chair and smiled. "Elder Jia, please sit by the side and wait for me for a while. If this hypocrite can't win against me, he might shamelessly attack me. When the time comes, please help me take care of him and kill him. Elder Jia." Chapter 42-46 Beggars still find it smelly. Although Elder Jia was a little confused, he still took the chair and sat to the side. Yun Shujo then said to Sanjiaoyan, "Come, hypocrite, repeat what you said just now." Sanjiaoyan's face was gloomy as he repeated what he had said before, and his words were even more intense, attracting the support of many onlookers. Yun Shujo waited for him to finish his sentence. She slowly took out her teacup and sipped a few mouthfuls of tea before saying, "Come, let's go through them one by one. First, you said that the so-called teachings of the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island are just for fame. The sword techniques taught are all trash. TSK, there's a very unpleasant sentence that I'm willing to say, but it's the most suitable to be used here. That is, beggars still find it smelly." As soon as Yun Shujo finished her sentence, the people below immediately started to shout in dissatisfaction, "Yun Shujo, you've gone too far. Who are you calling beggars? Great, so you big sects have always treated us as beggars. You've really gone too far." Elder Jia wished that he could go up and shut Yun Shuji's mouth. "Are you fucking here to help us?" The triangular-eyed old man had a look of contempt on his face. This Yun Shujo was nothing more than Sanjiaoyan. After everyone's voices quieted down slightly, Yun Shujo said indifferently, "Were you all very angry just now? Did you think that my words were very unpleasant? However, the words that you said about our Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island were several times more unpleasant than this. It was even more chilling than this. We're fishing for fame? Everyone in the northern continent knew about the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island. Why would we waste manpower and resources to come here and advertise? Besides, you should all know that even the disciples of our Nameless Sword sect, the sword techniques practiced by the outer disciples, inner disciples, and true disciples were all different. This wasn't looking down on anyone. It's not that we look down on outer sect disciples. It's that the higher the level of sword techniques, the higher the requirements for one's aptitude, spiritual power, and comprehension. If we really teach the sword techniques that the inner sect disciples practice to the outer sect disciples, it's not because we look down on them, but because we're harming them. If we're not careful, we'll suffer a backlash or even suffer from chi deviation. And although there's no lack of people with high spiritual power, most of them shouldn't be a match for the inner sect disciples of large sects, right? If we were to teach you high-level sword techniques rashly, if you were to go mad or suffer a backlash from your sword techniques, wouldn't we be charged with intentional murder? When everyone heard Yunchuji's words, they couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because what Yunchujio said was the truth. Even though they were all disciples of the Nameless Sword sect, the sword techniques they practiced were different. Moreover, many of them weren't even as good as the outer sect disciples, let alone the inner sect disciples. Yunchujio continued, also, even if we don't have those considerations from before, the sect has its own rules. If all the sword techniques can be casually taught to outsiders, would that be fair to the disciples in the sect? Ignoring the others, I only joined the Nameless Sword sect after going through a narrow escape. If you can learn the Nameless Sword sect's high-tier sword techniques so easily, would I still take the risk to take the test? I don't know what those hecklers are thinking. Do they think that the various sects will stupidly pass on all their treasures to you just because you heckled? Or are you simply harboring evil intentions and trying to turn this sword technique conference into the final realm? Chapter 42-47 Red-eyed green-furred turtle Yunchuji's tone suddenly became stern. If the sword technique conference doesn't take place, who will suffer the greatest loss? Don't you have any idea? They just casually put some bait, and you're going to take the bait? Where's your brain? If the sword technique conference doesn't take place, be it the Nameless Sword sect or the Flying Flower Island, it will still be the 6 great sections. However, you will never have the chance to see a high-quality sword again, and you will never have the chance to hear a lecture from a mighty figure, and you will never have the channels to get answers from them. Is this the result you want? Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. That's right, was this the result they wanted? If the sword technique conference was no longer held, wouldn't they become the ultimate victims? Hence, everyone glared angrily at the hecklers, completely forgetting that they were also accomplices in the past. The triangular-eyed old man did not expect Yunchujio to turn the situation around so quickly. Just as he was about to say something, Yunchuji's clear voice rang out again. San Jiaoyan, I'm sorry, but I have to apologize. By the way, this hypocrite is still talking about how I killed He Hongchuan yesterday. I was not willing to defend myself, but now I can only say it. If He Hongchuan did not have the intention to kill me first, I would not have killed him. But he wanted to kill me, and I still endured it. That is not kindness in my heart, that is stupidity. As for who said that they didn't see He Hongchuan's intention to kill me, then go back and practice your eyes, or else you'll embarrass yourself. Come, those who didn't see that he wanted to kill me, raise your hands and let me see. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched violently. You already said that you didn't see that it was embarrassing. Who else would be stupid enough to raise their hands? Seeing that no one raised their hands, Yunchujio nodded in satisfaction and said, all right, now that the truth has been revealed and our internal conflicts have been resolved, it's time to deal with this hypocrite. Come, hypocrite, tell me, what are you trying to do by going through so much trouble? I just said so much, but you didn't say a word. It's obvious that you have a guilty conscience. Do people like you not like to see others being good? Do you have the red-eye disease? If you have a disease, you should take your medicine. Don't come out and bark, or else you'll get beaten up. The old man with the triangular eyes was so angry that he almost died. How could he not have anything to say? He clearly wanted to speak a few times, but he was suppressed by Yun Chujia's swift speed and clear voice. San Jiaoyan. With a gloomy face, he said coldly, Yun Chuzhou, you've said so much. After all, your nameless sword sect is still bullying others. Everyone is just afraid of revenge, so they don't dare to make a sound. Yun Chuzhou curled the corner of her mouth. I've explained it clearly and with sufficient evidence. You actually said that I'm bullying others? It seems that you're being unreasonable. Since you said so, fine, then I'm bullying others with my power. I'm just vicious. What do you want to do? Do you want to eliminate evil for the people? Come on, if you don't dare to make a move, you'll be a green-furred turtle. The kind of green-furred turtle. The veins on the triangular-eyed old man's forehead were popping up. Obviously, he was extremely angry. He wished that he could kill Yun Chuzhou with a slap. However, there was still Elder Jia who was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. The triangular-eyed old man gritted his teeth and said coldly, Yun Chuzhou, let's wait and see. Justice is on the side. There will always be a time for you to get your retribution. Yun Chuzhou sneered, the law of heaven is clear. If there really is such a thing as retribution, then it should be a heavenly lightning strike to kill a red-eyed green-furred turtle like you. Boom! A heavenly lightning strike descended from the sky. Chapter 42-48 was about to vomit blood from He Xinjia's words even in his dreams. The triangular-eyed old man did not expect to be struck by lightning. He was struck squarely by it. Although he did not suffer any serious injuries, he was clearly stunned by the shock. The scene was deathly silent. At this moment, everyone was thinking, is this Yun Chuzhou a jinx? Why was the triangular-eyed old man struck by lightning with just a casual remark from San Jiaoyan? Or could it be that the triangular-eyed old man really had bad intentions, so he suffered retribution? Yun Chuzhou was also very confused, okay? Her jinx skill was sometimes effective and sometimes not. After careful calculation, it seemed that she had not appeared for a long time. Today, she actually reappeared in the martial arts world? However, what was the key point for her jinx skill to trigger? However, this guy would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity. He immediately put on a swindler's expression and said, hypocrite, I advise you to turn over a new leaf in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be a bolt of lightning. You might even be turned into ashes. The triangular-eyed old man was shocked, afraid, and hateful at the same time. For a moment, he was actually unable to say a word. He gave Yun Chuzhou a vicious glance and jumped off the high platform. Everyone came back to their senses and gave him another round of sarcasm. What hypocrite? What green-eyed turtle? The triangular-eyed old man only felt his head buzzing. His chest felt stuffy and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After swallowing a few pills, he left in a hurry. Seeing this, Yun Chuzhou said to Elder Jia with a smile, Elder Jia, please continue with your lecture. Give me back my chair. It's quite expensive. Elder Jia, he was convinced that Yun Chuzhou was stingy to this extent. However, he was convinced by Yun Chujia's eloquence. Just by relying on her eloquence, she was able to make the arrogant San Jiaoyan old man vomit blood. It was simply heaven-defying. Yun Chuzhou put away her chair and jumped off the high platform. The crowd automatically made way for her. On one hand, she was a little embarrassed. On the other hand, it was because of the heavenly lightning just now. If she provoked this guy, she would casually make another heavenly lightning bolt. But there was nowhere to cry. Yun Chuzhou jumped to the wonton stall. She said with a smile, Old man, my wontons aren't cold, right? How is it? I came back pretty quickly, right? If I didn't clean up the scum who scolded me halfway, I would definitely be faster than now. The old couple had just been watching the show and had no time to cook wontons. Now that they heard her question, they quickly began to cook wontons. The old man praised Yun Chuzhou and said, it's strange. Why is the person from yesterday and today so bold? In the past, no one dared to offend the 6 great sects so brazenly. The speaker had no intention of listening. Yun Shujio frowned, then stood up and left in a hurry. The old couple looked baffled and could only stare at Yun Shujia's back in a daze. Yun Shujio soon arrived at the VIP seats. She didn't avoid it and said to Master Ouyang directly, "Master Ouyang, I feel that something is unusual. Whether it was He Hongchuan yesterday or San Jiaoyan today, they were not just looking for trouble. Could they have been ordered by someone?" Master Ouyang and the others were also a little suspicious. The blood-devouring sword that He Hongchuan had brought out wasn't an ordinary sword. If he didn't have a motive, he wouldn't have brought it out so casually, and he wouldn't have cut Elder Duanma's treasured sword in half. There was also that San Jiaoyan elder. He was obviously inciting everyone to target the Nameless Sword sect and the Flying Flower Island, and even the 6 great sections. Could they really have been instigated by someone? Chapter 42-49, Humiliation. Master Ouyang, Island Master Qi, and the others discussed for a while before sending people to investigate the whereabouts of San Jiaoyan while searching for some clues. However, they didn't obtain any results. Everyone thought, could it be that they were thinking too much? The next few days were all sword techniques competitions and nothing abnormal happened. Everyone put the previous matters aside for the time being. Hei Xinjiu was not the least bit interested in sword techniques competitions. On the last day of the sword technique conference, Xiaoyu went up the high platform with full confidence. Xiaoyu won 3 rounds in a row and was defeated by Zhuang Hong in the end. Zhuang Hong had been very unlucky recently. The last time in the Bewilderment Shadow Forest, he was badly injured by the group of iron-armored blood lizards. This time, he was finally able to hold his head up high and was naturally very smug. Although Master Ouyang was very dissatisfied with Zhuang Hong's arrogance, seeing that he had won a few rounds in a row, his mood was still pretty good. No matter what, it was good that he had won. At this moment, a middle-aged man leaped onto the competition stage. Zhuang Hong sized up the middle-aged man a few times. He saw that the middle-aged man was at the 3rd layer of the nirvana of the spirit, while he was at the 4th layer of the nirvana of the spirit. His gaze revealed some disdain. "You really want to compete with me? Your spiritual power is inferior to mine, and your swordsmanship can't be compared to mine. I advise you to just admit defeat," Zhuang Hong said arrogantly. The middle-aged man revealed a hint of a cold smile. "If you can't beat me in a fight, then we'll talk about it after we fight." Zhuang Hong curled his lips. "HMPH, since you're asking for humiliation, then I'll grant you your wish." The two of them drew their swords and engaged in a fierce battle. In the beginning, Zhuang Hong had the absolute advantage, forcing the middle-aged man to the edge of the high platform several times. However, the situation quickly reversed, and the middle-aged man's sword technique suddenly became sharp. No matter what moves Zhuang Hong used, he was firmly restrained by the other party and soon fell into a disadvantageous position. The arrogance on Zhuang Hong's face had turned into panic. It shouldn't be. He used the space-shattering sword technique. Although it couldn't compare to the nameless sword technique that the elders practiced, it was still one of the best sword techniques. How could it be suppressed by the other party? Master Ouyang's expression changed slightly. He knew that Zhuang Hong was bound to lose. To be honest, although the middle-aged man's sword technique attainment wasn't bad, it wasn't that great. If Elder Duanmu and the others were to make a move, they could easily defeat him. But the problem was that the sword technique conference didn't allow the elders to step onto the stage. The Nameless Sword sect had lost a lot of face this time. Zhuang Hong, as the successor disciple of the sect leader, had actually been defeated by a rogue cultivator. If this news were to spread out, he would have no face to face anyone in the future. A moment later, Zhuang Hong's right leg was stabbed by the middle-aged man, and he directly knelt on one leg on the stage. The middle-aged man then stabbed Zhuang Hong's left leg, and Zhuang Hong firmly knelt in front of the middle-aged man. The successor disciple of the Nameless Sword sect leader is only a so-so. You've lost, go down. That person said disdainfully, and did not make another move. Zhuang Hong was angry, embarrassed, and a little unwilling. When he thought of the embarrassing situation he would face when he returned to the sect, he almost wanted to die. Master Ouyang's expression was very ugly. That person deliberately stabbed Zhuang Hong's legs, which was to humiliate Zhuang Hong and the Nameless Sword sect. Although he was very angry, he could not leave Zhuang Hong on the stage and ignore him. He immediately got Chu Feng and the others to help Zhuang Hong down from the stage. When the middle-aged man saw Zhuang Hong being helped down from the stage, he said coldly, "Is there anyone else who wants to compete? Even the successor disciple of the Nameless Sword sect master is no match for me. I reckon that no one would dare to come up and challenge me, right? If not, the champion of this sword technique conference will be me." Chapter 4250 I am the last disciple of the master of the sect. Although Zhuang Hong was arrogant, he was one of the best among the successive disciples. Since he had already lost, the others would naturally not go up and suffer. Wan Xingba's spiritual power was higher than Zhuang Hong's, but he did not come this time, so none of the other successive disciples went up on the stage. Master Ouyang's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip. Although Xiao Yu from the Flying Flower Island had lost, the Flying Flower Island wasn't famous for sword arts, so it didn't matter. However, their Nameless Sword sect was different. It could be imagined that if such news was spread out, their Nameless Sword sect would simply make people laugh their heads off. Hei Xinjiu, who was watching the show at the wonton stall, rolled her eyes. A sinister smile suddenly appeared on her face, and she hopped out of the wonton stall. Yun Shujiu squeezed through the crowd and arrived at the bottom of the stage. Just as the host was about to announce the results of the competition, she hurriedly shouted, "Wait! Wait! I want to compete with him." Master Ouyang and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Yun Shujiu step onto the stage. Wasn't she just rushing up to get beaten up? Even Zhuang Hong was no match for that middle-aged man. How could a small fry like her defeat the strong? That middle-aged man sized up Yun Shujiu and said, "Even the successor disciple of your Nameless Sword sect master is no match for me. You, a trash at the second level of the spirit realm, want to compete with me?" Yun Shujiu said with a smile, "So what if I'm at the second level of the spirit realm? Although I'm at the second level of the spirit realm, I'm still the successor disciple of the sect master. Moreover, I'm the last disciple. The sect master's sword technique has already been passed down to me. That Zhuang Hong is just a decoration." Master Ouyang almost fell to the ground when he heard that. When did he take her in as a successor disciple? Closed-door disciple? Nonsense. Shameless. Island Master Qi was also stunned. He looked at the stiff-faced Master Ouyang curiously. "Master Ouyang, did you really take that Yun Shujiu in as a closed-door disciple? If that's the case, you can't take in other disciples in the future." Master Ouyang's heart was like a beeping dog. What bullshit last disciple? He had never taken her in at all, okay? However, he couldn't directly deny that Yun Shujiu was a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect and had told such a big lie in front of everyone. In the end, the Nameless Sword sect was still the one who lost face. After all, that little girl was famous for being thick-skinned. Moreover, he still had a sliver of hope in his heart. If Yun Shujiu could really defeat that middle-aged man, she could announce to the public that she was his disciple and save some face. Therefore, he pretended not to hear Island Master Qi's words and did not say anything. In this way, he could attack, retreat, and defend. He would wait until the end of the competition to see the result. On the stage, Hei Xinjiu saw that Master Ouyang did not jump out to deny her words. She was very happy in her heart. She had been worried that the old man, Master Ouyang, would not let her go. Now, she would kill him first and report to him later. Once the rice is cooked, the rice is cooked. Zhuang Hong, who was recuperating, heard Yun Shujiu's words and was about to retort when Chu Feng, who was standing next to him, reacted quickly and knocked him out with a hand knife. Elder Gu saw everything clearly, and the corner of his eyes twitched. This disciple of his had always followed the rules and never done anything out of line. Now, he actually dared to plot against Zhuang Hong. He must have been led astray by that little girl, Yun Chuzhou. The middle-aged man on the competition stage was also shocked. However, he quickly said with disdain, "Is there no one left in your nameless sword sect, or is your sect master blind?" He actually took in a good-for-nothing like you as his last disciple. Chapter 42-51 Sword Genius. I'm in a good mood now, so I won't argue with you. Come, let's do it. I'll poke a few holes in your body, and then you can go back for dinner. Yun Chuzhou smiled like a flower. There was nothing she could do, she was in such a good mood. The middle-aged man snorted. You're boasting shamelessly. Since you're courting death, then you can't blame me. As soon as the middle-aged man finished his words, the sword in his hand stabbed towards Yun Chuzhou. Yo, you're really shameless. You actually attacked without saying anything. Fortunately, as the last disciple of the sect leader, I didn't give it to you for free. Otherwise, I would have really fallen into your trap, He Xinjiu said with a smile as she dodged. This guy's heart was black. She deliberately mentioned the matter of the last disciple time and time again. Even if it was fake, it had to become real. The middle-aged man naturally did not know the twists and turns here. He had only one goal, and that was to kill Yun Chuzhou. Therefore, his sword moves became more and more fierce, even more fierce than when he was dealing with Zhuang Hong. Although Yun Chuzhou was laughing and laughing on the surface, she did not dare to relax the slightest bit in her heart. If she were to fight seriously, her spiritual power was too low and she had almost no chance of winning. She had to find another way to do it. She remembered that when she was competing with Liao Tao, she had defeated her opponent at the critical moment by using her sword intent. Now that she had mastered 3 layers of sword intent, if she could successfully stack them, she could totally trick her opponent. However, before that, she had to try the slow sword intent that she had just comprehended. Thinking of this, Yun Chuzhou's movement technique was still very fast, but her sword moves had become slow. There was almost no movement to attack, and she had been relying on her movement technique to dodge. The crowd below the stage discussed animatedly, although this Yun Chuzhou's movement technique is exceptionally fast, but after dodging and dodging like this, the final result is still certain to be a loss. TSK, a second level and third level of Lingji can't be compared at all, okay? I don't know how the nameless sword sect's Master Ouyang took in such a trash disciple, but I've never heard that she was Master Ouyang's last disciple before. This is still hard to understand. Such a useless disciple, how could Master Ouyang have the face to be someone else? If this Yun Chuzhou wasn't the last disciple of Master Ouyang, how could she act so arrogantly? I heard that she used the talisman to blow up many successive disciples. Master Ouyang's heart was on fire in the VIP seats. On one hand, he was angry because of Yun Chuzhou's shamelessness. On the other hand, he hoped that Yun Chuzhou could create a miracle. But could she really do it? As he watched, Master Ouyang's face revealed a shocked expression. He saw that Yun Chuzhou's slow thrusts were all flaws of the middle-aged man. Not only that, Yun Chuzhou's body was already surrounded by sword intent. Could this be the legendary slow sword intent that was difficult to comprehend? At the same time, the others also realized this. Elder Gu exclaimed, "It's the slow sword intent." She actually comprehended the slow sword intent. Heavens, this little girl had already comprehended the chaotic sword intent and the fast sword intent. She actually comprehended the slow sword intent in such a short period of time. Doesn't that mean that she has already grasped 3 types of sword intent? She really is a genius in sword arts. Sect Master, as expected, your eyes are as sharp as torches. Elder Duanmu was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He had clearly taken a liking to this little girl first, all right? However, she was still unable to infuse her sword intent into her body, so she had not accepted her as a disciple. If she had known this would happen, she would have struck first. Chapter 4252 was the first place Elder Duanmu remembered that he had once defeated Yunchujo. He said that the fast sword intent and the slow sword intent were opposites. It was impossible for a person to master both sword intents at the same time. He suddenly felt his face hurt. However, although Master Ouyang and the others were surprised by Yunchujia's talent, they still felt that there was almost no hope for her to win. After all, the difference in spiritual power was too big. The middle-aged man thought the same. Although he was surprised that Yunchujo had mastered the slow sword intent, he was not too worried. He felt that it was only a matter of time before she won. As expected, as time passed, Yunchujia's movement began to slow down. She could not even maintain her sword intent. She was forced to retreat by the middle-aged man. At this moment, Yunchujia's forehead was full of sweat. She began to gasp for breath. Anyone would think that she was already at the end of her rope and would be defeated soon. At this moment, Yunchujo lost her balance and fell to the ground. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with viciousness as he stabbed the sword in his hand towards Yunchujo. Master Ouyang and the others stood up in shock. Even if they wanted to save her, it was too late. It was over. Even if the little girl didn't die, she would probably be seriously injured. Elder Dongfang's eyes flashed. He remembered the last time when Yunchujo and Liao Tao fought. It was very similar to this scene. At that time, Yunchujo used the superposition of sword intent to block Liao Tao's attack. This time, it should be possible. However, he didn't know if she could superposition 3 layers of sword intent. At this moment, the middle-aged man's sword tip was only 3 feet away from Yunchujo, but it was blocked by a layer of sword intent that seemed to have substance. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a cold smile. A mere sword intent still wanted to block him? Dream on. He increased his strength, and the sword tip quickly pierced through the sword intent. Just when he thought he was about to succeed, the sword tip was blocked by another layer of sword intent, and it was even stronger than the previous sword intent. His face revealed a stunned expression. What was going on? Just as he was stunned, he stumbled. Before he could react, Yunchujia's sword had already pierced his left chest. Yunchujo did not use a large kitchen knife in this competition. Although the large kitchen knife was powerful, it was too short. She was at a disadvantage when fighting with the sword wielder, so she casually took out a sword. The middle-aged man's reaction was fast enough. He jumped out of Yunchujia's attack range almost the instant he was stabbed by Yunchujo. Although he was unwilling, he was already injured. Even if he fought again, he would not be Yunchujia's opponent. Therefore, he said coldly, I admit defeat. We will meet again. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he did not wait for Yunchujo to reply. He directly jumped down the high platform and squeezed out of the crowd to leave in a hurry. Yunchujo wanted to go down the platform to chase after San Jiaoyan because she felt that this person was very likely to be on the same side as the old man with the triangular eyes. However, she was stopped by the host. The host asked if there were still people who wanted to challenge her. If there weren't any, the first place in this sword technique conference would be Yunchujo. The onlookers shook their heads like rattledrums. Although this Yunchujia's spiritual power wasn't that great, her swordsmanship was indeed not bad. Most importantly, she had a belly full of evil water. It was better not to provoke her. Moreover, she was the last disciple of Master Ouyang. With this guy's character, if he offended her, he might not necessarily take revenge. In the end, He Xinzhou became the champion of this year's sword technique conference. Chapter 4253 confirmed her identity. He Xinzhou also felt that she was pretty awesome. She was originally just a bystander, but in the end, she became the champion. Don't you think it's infuriating? At this time, Zhuanghong had already woken up. When he saw Yun Chuzhou, who was smiling like a flower on the stage, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was one thing for Yun Chuzhou to steal his limelight, but she actually shamelessly claimed that she was Master's last disciple. He would never let her have her way. Thus, he shouted in exasperation, "All of you have been deceived by her. She is not my Master's last disciple at all, she is lying." Zhuanghong's words immediately caused an uproar, and Master Ouyang nearly fainted from anger. Originally, it would have been fine if no one brought this matter up again. When the time came, he would pretend to be muddle-headed, and Yun Chuzhou, a mere disciple, could not really force him. But now, this fool actually shouted out again. Wasn't this forcing him to admit it? Not admit it? What a joke. Yun Chuzhou finally managed to pick up the reputation of the broken nameless sword sect. Could it be that he wanted to slap himself in the face? Thus, before Yun Chuzhou could say anything, Master Ouyang said coldly, "Everyone, Yun Chuzhou is indeed my last disciple." As for Zhuanghong, he was injured so badly that he lost his mind, so he spouted nonsense. "Everyone, don't take it to heart." Zhuanghong couldn't believe his ears. The master of the sect had really accepted Yun Chuzhou as his disciple? Under the huge blow, he fainted again. On the stage, Yun Chuzhou was very happy. Old man Ouyang had confirmed her identity in public, and she had become the successor disciple of the sect master. Beautiful. However, when this fellow saw that the prize was only a few bottles of pills and some spirit stones, he was a little disappointed. However, it was a waste of time anyway, so he just accepted it. After the award ceremony, this year's sword technique conference came to an end. Yun Chuzhou jumped in front of sect master Ouyang and bowed to her freshly baked master. "Master, little Jiu pays her respects to you." Sect master Ouyang's heart was like a muttering dog. He had heard of people who were forced to accept disciples, but this was the first time he had heard of someone who was forced to be a master. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he couldn't say anything. He could only squeeze out an amiable smile and say, "Disciple, you performed well today. Your master is very satisfied." Yun Chuzhou tilted her head and said with a smile, "Master, since you are so satisfied, shouldn't you reward me with some good things?" Sect master Ouyang, he knew that he couldn't accept this disciple. He had just accepted it, and now he was asking for something from him. Wouldn't he have to plunder all the good things from me in the future? He wanted to not give it to her, but he couldn't keep his pride. He could only take out a low-grade defensive immortal artifact and give it to He Xinjiu. When He Xinjiu saw that it was a low-grade immortal artifact, his smile became even brighter. He followed behind Master Ouyang and called him Master sweetly. Elder Duanmu felt sour in his heart. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. However, since things had come to this point, there was no point in regretting. Yun Chuzhou originally wanted to greet the old couple who sold wontons, but the old couple was probably worried that there would be too many people at the end of the conference, so they had already packed up and left. This fellow had no choice but to give up. As it was close to evening, most of the people decided to set off the next morning. After arriving at the inn and having dinner, Yun Chuzhou had just entered her room when Chu Feng came in with a distressed expression. He even specially locked the door from the inside. Yun Chuzhou looked puzzled. "Senior brother Chu, what's the matter?" Chapter 42-54. Seniority. Chu Feng only sat on the chair, sighing and not saying a word. Yun Chuzhou could not help but laugh. "Senior brother Chu, you came here to sigh? If you have nothing else to do, then leave. I'm still waiting for a rest." Chu Feng's mouth opened and closed, he gritted his teeth and said, "Junior sister Yun, Island Master Qi has already spoken. He firmly disagrees with the matter between her and me, saying that she can only marry a disciple of the Flying Flower Island. Moreover, he also said that if he finds out that we are meeting privately in the future, he will expel her from the Flying Flower Island and not acknowledge her as his disciple." Although Yun Shujo knew that Island Master Qi looked down on Chu Feng, she did not expect that he would be so unyielding this time. It seemed that he had made up his mind. Seeing that Yun Shujo did not speak, Chu Feng's heart became even colder. If junior sister Yun could not do anything about it, then there was really nothing he could do. About this matter of yours, you can't be too hasty. You have to wait for the right time. Besides, he said that you're not allowed to meet in private. Then next time, you can meet openly. That old thing will die of anger. Yun Shujo said with a grin. Chu Feng, how can this be? Seeing Chu Feng's hopeless look, Yun Shujo couldn't help but laugh. Senior brother Chu, don't worry. As long as you coax Little Moon to be happy, that Island Master Qi won't be a problem at all. Sooner or later, he'll agree to your matter. Hearing this, Chu Feng heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Anyway, there was still a long way to go, so he would slowly think of a way in the future. Chu Feng temporarily put this matter aside and forced a smile. Junior sister Yun, I haven't congratulated you yet. You'll be the sect master's last disciple from now on. Yun Shujo said smugly, that's easy to say, that's easy to say. If there's anything in the future, I'll take care of you. However, I found a problem. Should I call Zhuang Hong martial uncle or senior brother in the future? Isn't the way we address each other in the sect a little chaotic? Chu Feng was stunned, but after thinking about it, it was true. The successive disciples of the Nameless Sword sect were not from the same batch of disciples, so they were all successive disciples with different seniority. However, most elders only accepted one disciple, and even if they accepted two disciples, they were all from the same batch of disciples. There was really no example like Zhuang Hong and Yun Shujo. Previously, everyone had called them randomly, and no one had noticed. Moreover, the elders were addressed as so-and-so elders, so it did not involve the issue of seniority. Now that Yun Shujo said this, it did not seem too good. For example, if he addressed Zhuang Hong as Uncle Master Zhuang Hong, wouldn't Zhuang Hong have the same seniority as his master, Elder Gu? It was simply a mess. Yun Shujo curled her lips. It's not that I want to say it, but my master is very busy every day. Naturally, he would not think of such small matters. In the future, I will reluctantly help him. I will handle some of the sect's matters. Chu Feng, so after talking for so long, her ultimate goal was to divide the power. However, it was too difficult. Not to mention other things, the sect wouldn't let a female disciple take over the power. No matter how bad junior sister Yun was, she probably wouldn't be able to use it. Just as Chu Feng was thinking. Yun Shujo said sneakily, let's not talk about this first. Senior brother Chu, tell me, how did you hook up with Little Moon? Did you hook up with her after I went missing? Tell me. Chu Feng's face immediately turned red and he mumbled, no, there's nothing to tell. Senior brother Chu, it's not right for you to do this. If you don't tell me some details, how can I help you convince Island Master Qi? Since you don't want to tell me, then fine, I won't care about your matters anymore. Hei Shinjo pouted and said. Chapter 42-55 Ex-Fiancé, you're here? Chu Feng saw that Yun Shujo was about to give up, so he quickly said, I'll talk, I'll talk. After you disappeared that day, Chu Feng and Yun Shujo began to tell the story of his relationship with Xiao Yu. On the other side, Master Ouyang and the others were drinking tea on the first floor and discussing the sword technique conference. At this moment, a man in white walked in from the door. Master Ouyang and the others were shocked and stood up. There was no other reason. The aura of the person who came was too strong. Even they felt a great sense of danger. Master Ouyang and the others did not have the time to look at the man's appearance. The man's cold voice sounded, I am Yun Shujia's fiancé. Where is she? Everyone was dumbfounded. What the hell? Yun Shujia's fiancé? He was Yun Shujia's fiancé. In the past, they had heard that little girl brag about how awesome her fiancé was. At that time, everyone thought that she was bragging. They thought that she was simply stupid to give up Tower Master Luochen for her so-called fiancé. However, now that they saw it, yes, they were stupid. Although Tower Master Luochen was extraordinary, the gap between him and the man in front of him was still very obvious. How should they put it? The aura of the man in front of them was his own aura. And the aura of Tower Master Luochen was more or less borrowed from the power of the 9 pavilions. Di Baiming's heart sank when he saw that this bunch of idiots in front of him actually didn't make a sound. Could it be that these people all knew about Little Nine and that little sweetheart? So they deliberately hid it? When Di Baiming thought of this, the aura on his body became even more threatening. Master Ouyang's forehead couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly said, This young master, little Jiu, is upstairs. I will bring you up now. When Di Baiming heard this, he nodded slightly. The aura on his body was slightly restrained. Master Ouyang immediately led Di Baiming upstairs with a bitter expression. Elder Ji Yu and the others followed behind him. Di Baiming frowned but didn't say anything. Master Ouyang and the others hadn't even reached the door of Yun Chujia's room when they heard Yun Chujio giggle. Senior brother Chu, you are quite tender at the critical moment. You are much better than my scumbag fiancé. Master Ouyang, disciple, ancestor, are you unlucky? Why did you have to say such words at this moment? Your scumbag fiancé is going to freeze your newly made master into an ice sculpture. At this moment, Chu Feng said with a smile, Junior sister Yun, it's not that senior brother is boasting, but at the crucial moment, senior brother is much more reliable than your fiancé. 2 words flashed through Master Ouyang's mind, courting death. This Chu Feng was courting death with his strength. Di Baiming's face was frighteningly gloomy. He stretched out his hand to push the door, but it didn't budge. It was actually locked inside. A certain honored master couldn't suppress his anger anymore. A man and a woman had even locked the door. What on earth were they doing? Bang! A certain someone smashed the door with his palm. He Xinjiu and Chu Feng, who were chatting and laughing inside, looked at the door in confusion. Yun Chujio looked at Di Baiming's gloomy face that looked like a dead man and swallowed her saliva. She stretched out her claws and said weakly, Ex-fiancé, you're here? Ex-fiancé? A cold smile appeared on the corner of a certain someone's mouth. He ignored Yun Chujio and looked at Chu Feng, who had a dumbfounded look on his face. What the hell was that pointy mouth and monkey cheeks? Putting everything else aside, there was something wrong with the name. It was both Chu and Feng. Was it gay or straight? Chapter 4256. My little darling Chu Feng was first intimidated by Di Baiming's pressure, and second, he felt goosebumps when Di Baiming looked at him like he was looking at a dead person. His legs could not help but go weak, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Yun Chujio subconsciously went to help him, but before her hand touched Chu Feng, the poor kid, flew out of the back window with a whoosh. Elder Gu grinned. This was the 2nd floor. Although he was a cultivator, his stupid disciple was scared silly. He might have forgotten to ride his sword. Yun Chujio glared at Di Baiming. What are you doing? Why did you slap senior brother Chu away for no reason? Are you sick again? Or did you not take your medicine when you went out? Di Baiming looked at her deeply, then grabbed her waist and jumped out of the 2nd floor window. He Xinjiu dared to say that just now because of the presence of Master Ouyang and the others. Seeing that Di Baiming was going to take her away, she immediately wailed, Master, help. Master, you can't just ignore your precious disciple. Master, you can't just leave her to die. Master Ouyang, huh? Why did his ears suddenly stop working? His eyes also stopped working. He couldn't hear or see anything. Elder Duanmu and the others didn't move either. What a joke. Why would they get involved in the affairs of a couple? Besides, if they got involved, they would be tortured to death. Unless they had water in their heads, they would only ask for trouble. Speaking of which, Yun Shujia's fiancé was so powerful. How come they had never heard of him before? It was really strange. On the other side, He Xingjiu was brought out of the city by a certain deity. On the way, she even piqued Kufang, who was badly bruised. Di Baiming pointed at the miserable Chu Fang and asked, "Is he the little darling you mentioned?" Yun Shujiu shrunk her neck and looked at the dumbfounded Chu Fang with a look of reluctance. She said, "No, he is the little darling of the little moon. It has nothing to do with me." Chu Fang finally felt blessed. He felt that he was most likely misunderstood as an adulterer. He quickly shouted, "Yes, yes, I like Xiao Yu from the Flying Flower Island. Why would I like junior sister Yun? She is ruthless and full of evil intentions. If I marry her, I'm afraid that she will kill me without anyone knowing." Yun Shujiu gritted her teeth. The guilt in her heart was instantly fed to the dogs. Di Baiming glanced at Chu Fang. Seeing that what he said did not seem to be a lie, he snorted coldly and waved his sleeve. Scram! The pitiful Chu Fang flew out again. Fortunately, he had experience this time. Halfway through, he thought of riding a sword and disappeared without a trace. "Where are you going?" Di Baiming said coldly. He Xingjiu, who was about to escape, touched her nose guiltily. "I don't want to go anywhere." Why are you looking for me?" "Who's little darling?" Little darling is..." Yun Shujiu planned to take out one of the dumb cubs from the spiritual beast bag to fill in the numbers. However, those dumb cubs kneeled on the ground and kowtowed non-stop. "Little fairy, master, please spare us. If we go out, we will die without a complete corpse." Yun Shujiu, good, very good, these ingrates. Yun Shujiu wanted to release the puppets again. This time, even those drifters squeezed out a word, "No." Yun Shujiu, this fellow really had no choice. In the end, he took out the big black pot, rubbed his hands, and laughed dryly. "This is my little darling. As the saying goes, you are my heart, you are my liver, you are my big black pot." Chapter 4257, You Can Call Me Black-Eyed Wolf. Di Baiming looked at the big black pot and sneered, "It's your little darling?" He Xingjiu braced herself and said, "Yes, I named it Little Darling. It's always called Big Black Pot." Di Baiming's voice became colder. "Even if it's Little Darling, what about your ex-fiancé?" Ex-fiancé. He Xingjiu kicked the pebble on the ground with the tip of her foot and stammered, not knowing how to explain it. Di Baiming looked at Yun Shujia's rolling eyes and did not rush her. He wanted to hear how she wanted to smooth things over in the end. He Xingjiu finally thought of an excuse and said slyly, "Ex-fiancé, that's right, you are my ex-fiancé. Because in my heart, you are already my husband, so naturally, you are not my fiancé." He Xingjiu secretly gave herself a 360-degree like that had no blind spots. This excuse was absolutely flawless. Although Di Baiming knew that Yun Shujiu was giving him an excuse, he had to admit that when he heard the word husband, his heart felt weak. However, when he thought of the short time and poor skill on the recording stone, his face immediately darkened. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Then how do you explain the short time and poor skill?" He Xingjiu shrunk her neck and cursed in her heart, "Humph, if I didn't say that, would you have run over here without any hesitation?" Besides, he had never tried it before. Maybe it was really the short time and poor technique. Of course, only a fool would say what he was thinking. He blinked his eyes and said, "Short time? Poor technique? I mean, when you massaged my shoulders, not only was the time short, but your technique was also poor. Is there a problem?" Di Baiming was furious. Massaging his shoulders? Then, how do you explain the last sentence that failed to make you pregnant after so many years? It's not easy to explain. If I wanted to be pregnant, I would be pregnant too. How could it be a baby? I've heard of piglets and puppies, but I've never heard of human babies. Biming sneered. He had finally seen what it meant to lie with his eyes wide open. Even if you can explain the first part, how do you explain the breakup fee and the ingrate at the end? Hei Shinjo really could not find any excuses, she simply started to act shamelessly. I'm just playing with you. If you're angry, you can call me an ingrate. Even if you call me a black-eyed wolf, I won't be angry. It's just a title, what's the big deal? Biming looked at Yunchujia's scoundrel-like appearance. Even if he gritted his teeth in hatred, there was nothing he could do. Beat her? Of course, he couldn't bear to. Scold her? It didn't seem to be of any use to this little scoundrel. He couldn't hit her, he couldn't scold her, so he could only use the old method, and kiss her. Hei Shinjo was dizzy from the kiss. 2 words flashed through her mind. Done. When the two of them were kissing passionately, Biming suddenly covered Yunchujia's mouth. The two of them hid behind a bush. Hei Xinjia's face was red, and she looked at Biming in confusion. Biming's throat tightened, and he closed his eyes before he mouthed, "Someone is coming." Yunchujio was stunned. Who would come here in the middle of the night? Yunchujio looked out through the gap in the bush. After a while, she saw many masked men gathering in this direction. The leader said, "Search." Yunchujio and Biming must be nearby. Yunchujio captured them alive. Biming will kill them without mercy. Chapter 4258 was about Meilon Luli again. Yunchujio was shocked. Who were these people? Why were they so familiar with her and the gigolo's whereabouts? Obviously, someone had tipped them off. The place where the two of them were hiding was not safe. They would probably be discovered soon. Biming's eyes flashed with a trace of sternness. He gave Yunchujio a look, indicating for her to stay here. He went out to send them away. Although his spiritual power was suppressed in the towering sky continent, it was not a problem for him to take care of these people. Biming's figure suddenly flashed. The two people closest to the bushes had already been killed by him. With another flash, another 2 people fell to the ground. Following Biming's ghostly figure, there was soon a pile of corpses on the ground. Hei Shinjo was speechless. Damn, the gigolo was getting more and more powerful. This was a killer weapon that would never fail. The leader obviously did not expect Biming's spiritual power to be so terrifying. He suddenly remembered something. He took out several items that were shimmering with a faint blue light from his storage ring and threw them at Biming, who was fighting. Biming used his palm wind to smash those items into pieces. However, the next moment, he knew that he had fallen into a trap. Biming felt that the spiritual power in his body was rapidly depleting. Moreover, the cold poison that had not relapsed for a long time had also relapsed. The person who was hurling at him was actually the blue marble. How did these people know that the blue marble was his weakness? Where did they get so many blue marble? Hei Shinjo, who was hiding behind the bushes, secretly cried out. The pretty boy had been tricked. These masked men not only had high spiritual power, but there were also many of them. If the pretty boy had not been tricked, he could have easily taken care of these dregs. However, the current situation was too disadvantageous for them. Yunchujio thought of this and was about to go out to help, but Biming flashed in front of her and held her waist. The aura on his body suddenly soared, and he released an ice dragon to repel the masked men's attack. Then, he brought Yunchujio and rushed towards the direction of Azure Cloud City. There were cultivators from the 6 sects gathered in Azure Cloud City. These masked men would definitely not dare to follow them in. Therefore, as long as they entered Azure Cloud City, they would be temporarily safe. Yunchujio saw that Biming's face was getting paler and paler. There were even ice shards appearing on his hair. She knew that Biming's cold poison was acting up again. She hated those masked men to death. She kept throwing talismans at them, regardless of whether they were high-level talismans or low-level talismans. Sacks after sacks of talismans were thrown out. Those masked men were unlucky. The few people who were chasing at the front were blown to pieces. Although the people at the back were on guard and avoided the talismans, they also slowed down and watched as Di Baiming and Yun Shujiu entered the Yunsang city. The leader gritted his teeth. There was a large group of cultivators in Yunsang city now. Even if they chased after them, they would not gain anything. Di Baiming had already fallen into the trap anyway. There were many other ways to kill him. Hence, he waved his hand and left with the masked men. Yun Shujiu saw that the people did not chase after them and heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she saw Di Baiming beside her, her heart could not help but sink. Di Baiming's body was already covered in a layer of ice, and his spiritual power level was dropping rapidly. It had even dropped to the spiritual power level. She could not care about anything else. She took out a rolling pin and smashed the ice on Di Baiming's body. Then, she was going to cut her wrist and use her blood to help Di Baiming resist the cold poison. Chapter 42-59. Are you injured? Unexpectedly, Di Baiming suddenly opened his eyes and said with great effort, "No need. I can hold it." Hei Xingjiu saw that he was still stubborn at this time, so she angrily gave him a rolling pin. Unexpectedly, Di Baiming wanted to stand up and stay away from her so that she wouldn't insist on feeding him blood. Coincidentally, the rolling pin landed on Di Baiming's forehead. Di Baiming was already at the end of his tether. This rolling pin became the straw that broke the camel's back, and he passed out. Yun Shujiu, was she trying to murder her husband? However, passing out was just the right time to prevent him from refusing to drink the blood. Yun Shujiu was about to draw her blood when she saw Di Baiming's body emitting a dazzling light. Then, she saw a small silver snake on the ground. It was a small silver snake that was frozen stiff. Yun Shujiu was stunned for a moment before she understood. Di Baiming's spiritual power had soared for a moment before he managed to get rid of those masked men. He must have used a secret technique, so the side effect was that he had turned into a small silver snake again. However, this was also good. At least she could bring him along with her so that he wouldn't attract any attention. At the same time, she could save his life. She didn't believe that those masked men would dare to openly oppose the nameless sword sect. Yun Shujiu thought of this and looked at the frozen silver snake. She felt a little troubled. She could not set fire to it, right? In the end, she gritted her teeth and stuffed the silver snake into her clothes. The bone-piercing chill made this fellow shiver. However, she saw that the effect was not bad, so she could only shiver as she walked towards the inn. The inn was brightly lit. Master Ouyang and the others were obviously not asleep. Or rather, this group of old men were all waiting curiously for the follow-up. Elder Duanmu frowned and said, "The little girl's fiancé looks too cold. He won't do anything to the little girl, right?" Elder Dongfang smiled and said, "Don't worry. That little girl is full of schemes. She will be fine." Elder Gu echoed, "That's right. They are a young couple. It will be fine once the misunderstanding is resolved. Moreover, I don't think the little girl's fiancé is an unreasonable person." Chu Fang, whose face was badly bruised, "Are you my own master? Your disciple has been thrown to such a state. And you are still speaking for him?" As everyone was discussing, they saw Yun Shujiu walking in from outside, trembling. Everyone thought to themselves, "It seems that this little girl has been taught a good lesson. Otherwise, she wouldn't still be trembling in fear." Master Ouyang coughed lightly and asked, "Little Nine, where's your fiancé?" Yun Shujiu squeezed out a smile and said, "He has something to do and has to leave first." "Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to my room first." Master Ouyang saw that she didn't look too good, so he waved his hand. Anyway, it wasn't an urgent matter, so it wouldn't be too late to ask tomorrow. At this time, Chu Feng cried out in surprise, "Junior Sister Yun, why is there blood on your clothes? Are you injured?" Yun Shujiu looked down in confusion and saw a small blood stain on her chest, and it was still spinning. She was shocked. Could it be that the gigolo had vomited blood? She did not have time to say anything and rushed back to her room. Yun Shujiu closed the door and quickly took out the small silver snake from her clothes. It was still cold in her hands, but it was no longer frozen. Hei Xinjiu saw that the small silver snake's nose was still bleeding. She was so angry that she threw the small silver snake directly onto the bed. A certain being who was bleeding from his nose could be considered to hate Chu Feng. It was not easy to have a chance to have intimate contact with his wife, but it was interrupted by him. That thing that did not know whether it was straight or gay was really detestable. Chapter 4260 Red Glass. Yun Shujiu was already speechless from anger. Men were indeed animals that leaned on the lower half of their bodies to think, and the gigolo was no exception. Even at this time, he still had the mood to take advantage of her. Shameless. Shameless. She was both embarrassed and angry. Previously, the situation was urgent, so she did not think too much and directly put the small silver snake into her arms. Who would have thought that this pervert actually had a nosebleed? He must be thinking of something good. She realized that once the pretty boy turned into a snake, he would become shameless. She glared at the small silver snake on the bed and found that its body was covered with a layer of ice. She wanted to ignore it, but she could not bear to do so. She could only get a simple hot water bag and put it under the quilt. Then, she stuffed the small silver snake in. The small silver snake gritted its teeth weakly. Wait for that thing that could be straight or bent. After Yun Shujiu changed her clothes, she lifted the blanket and saw that the little silver snake was in better condition. She said, "What do you think about this matter? Who do you think did it?" A certain lord coldly snorted, "It's most likely Lan Luchen's doing. Otherwise, that person wouldn't have said that he wanted to capture you alive and wanted to kill me." Moreover, back then, the Lihan Palace had once searched for Meilong glaze in the Yulon Valley. It looks like it's not a coincidence. They really know that Meilong glaze can trigger the cold poison in my body. Yun Shujiu nodded. If it was the people from the 9 pavilions, they could also explain why they knew about debeiming. It was because the inn where the 9 pavilions stayed was right across from them. Hence, they knew that debeiming had brought her away previously. However, how did they gather so many people so quickly? Could it be that they were all disciples who had come to participate in the sword technique conference? Yun Shujiu recalled the incident where a certain man had turned into a snake and asked, "Did you use a secret technique again? Is that why you became like this?" A certain man did not deny it. In that situation, if he had not used a secret technique, it would have been very difficult for the two of them to escape unscathed. Yun Shujiu instantly felt that the pretty boy was actually quite bitter. Although he had the spiritual power to fight against the heavens and the earth, there was a cold poison in his body that would flare up from time to time. Not to mention other things, the blue-colored glass was enough to take his life. Is there no way to solve the blue marble? Yun Shujiu sighed and asked. It's not that there's no way. Once the cold poison in your body is solved, you naturally won't be afraid of the blue marble, a certain being said faintly. Yun Shujiu poked the head of the small silver snake in a bad mood. You're just spouting nonsense. It's like you didn't say anything. Is there any other way? Debeiming hesitated for a moment and said, there is another way. If we can find the fiery red glass for cultivation, the blue succulent glass will no longer trigger the cold poison. However, I have read many books and asked Shui Wuji and Enfeng to investigate. There is no news about the fiery red glass. Perhaps it has gone extinct. Yun Shujiu comforted him, everything in this world is mutually reinforcing and counteracting each other. Since the blue succulent glass has appeared, the fiery red glass must still exist. There will be news eventually. Debeiming acknowledged and then said, I was careless this time. If I knew that they had the sapphire blue glaze, I wouldn't have fallen for it when I was using my spiritual energy shield during the fight. Di Biming was a little annoyed. Originally, he was aggressive and came to settle the score with the little rascal. Now, he had become a little silver snake. Not only did he delay the official business, but he had lost all face and dignity. Chapter 4261. The suicidal Chu Fong. Yun Chujiu comforted her a few more times and suddenly remembered what Xue Wuji had said to her. She picked up the silver snake skin and asked with a smile, "The head of the black chicken told me that you have to put aside the feelings between men and women. Even if you marry me in the future, you will only treat me as a decoration. Is there such a thing?" Di Biming gritted his teeth. He hated Xue Wuji as well. He explained, "I do want to put aside the feelings between man and woman for the time being. After all, the most important thing now is to improve my strength. However, I didn't say anything about treating you as a decoration. Don't listen to Wu Jia's nonsense." Yun Chujiu frowned when she heard that. There was one good thing about a gigolo. He said what he said and said what he said. He would not lie. So, was Xue Wuji lying to her? She thought back to Xue Wuji's words and actions and gritted her teeth. The last few sentences were probably made up by that random Xue Wuji in order to attract her attention. She was too angry at that time, so she did not see through his little trick. Yun Chujiu was about to speak when Chu Fang's voice came from outside the room. "Junior sister Yun, can I go in?" The small silver snake's vertical pupils immediately flashed with a faint light. What was this bent and straight idiot doing here again? Yun Chujiu stuffed the small silver snake into the quilt and then opened the door. Chu Fang sized up Yun Chujiu. Seeing that she was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Junior sister Yun, are you okay?" "I'm fine. There's not blood on my clothes. It's stained with something else." Yun Chujiu originally wanted to send Chu Fang away with a few words, but seeing that he had entered the room by himself, she could only close the door and walk to the table to sit down. Chu Fang lowered his voice and asked, "Junior sister Yun, is your fiancé really gone? You're not lying to me, right?" Yun Chujiu nodded. "Yes, he's gone. He has other things to do." Chu Fang suddenly seemed to relax a lot. He raised his voice and said, "I'm not saying this, Junior sister Yun, but your fiancé is too rude. He threw me down from the second floor without even asking for the truth. Look at what he did to me." Yun Chujiu looked at the bruised and swollen face of Chu Fang and said guiltily, "Senior brother Chu, I'm sorry. I've implicated you." Chu Fang waved his hand and said, "It's not your fault. The main thing is that your fiancé is too impolite. I see that he treats you coldly. He wouldn't hit you usually, right? If he really hit you, you can't have such a fiancé no matter how high your spiritual power is. As a man, you have to take care of a girl. How can you be so rude?" "You see, I have always been obedient to the little moon." Chu Fang shivered as he spoke. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? The little silver snake under the blanket was about to explode in anger. "Good, very good. I will remember you." Yun Chujiu found it funny in her heart. For the sake of Chu Fang's little life, she began to change the topic. "Senior brother Chu, let's not talk about him for now. Are your injuries okay?" Chu Fang said a little embarrassedly, I'm fine." I didn't react at that time either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen like this. "Since you're alright, I'll go back first." "Oh right, I came to tell you that we'll set off tomorrow at midnight. Don't be late." Yun Chujiu nodded and sent Chu Fang out. This guy closed the door and giggled when he remembered what Chu Fang had said earlier. The small silver snake under the blanket glared at her fiercely. He had already killed Chu Fang again and again in his heart. Chapter 4262 Yun Shujia's guest. The next morning, Yun Shujo got up on time and put the small silver snake into her sleeve. This way, she could keep warm and avoid being taken advantage of by this pervert. After everyone got on the flying spirit tool, Yun Shujo felt that Zhuang Hong had been staring at her viciously. This guy sneered in his heart. If he didn't do anything evil, she would keep him for a few days. If he was looking for death, then she didn't mind giving him a ride. Thinking of Zhuang Hong, Yun Shujo thought of the middle-aged man from before. Then, she was suddenly shocked, and a bold guess surfaced in her mind. Could it be that the 9 pavilions were behind He Hongchuan, the old man with the triangular eyes, and the middle-aged man behind him at the sword technique conference? Although their words were directed at the 6 great sects, their main target was the nameless sword sect, which included the Flying Flower Island. Therefore, after learning about the Gigolo's news, they were able to gather a group of people so quickly. These people had other uses. However, their people had been dealt with by her one after another, so they changed their plans in an emergency. Then, the question was, what was the purpose of the 9 pavilions doing this? Yun Shujo thought that what they did was nothing more than to defame the reputation of the nameless sword sect, causing its reputation to plummet, and then slowly erode it. Yun Shujo wanted to tell Master Ouyang about her guess, but she felt that the evidence was insufficient. Moreover, she couldn't mention what happened last night, so she decided to put it aside for now and wait for the right time to bring it up. However, along the way, He Xinjiu often approached Master Ouyang. Her small mouth was so sweet that it was as if it was dipped in honey. Master Ouyang couldn't stop smiling. Master Ouyang now felt that it was not bad to take in such a disciple, but it was a pity that she was a female disciple. After some time, he would find a reason to take in a new disciple to train her. As for Yun Shujo, she could be his disciple, but she would definitely not be the successor of the sect master. If He Xinjiu knew what Master Ouyang was thinking, she would definitely sneer. How could she let others snatch what she liked? Dream on. After everyone returned to the nameless sword sect, He Xinjiu ran back to her courtyard. What He Xinjiu didn't notice was that a disciple from afar peeked at her. This unlucky person was the disciple who was knocked out by Di Baiming. Before Di Baiming left, he had threatened him. If he dared to leak his information, he would definitely kill him. Hence, this unlucky person didn't dare to tell anyone that Di Baiming had come. Now that he saw that Yun Shujo had returned safely, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Yun Shujo returned to her own courtyard. After washing up, she released the drifters and the silly cuties as usual before she told Di Baiming her guess. It was inconvenient to talk on a flying spirit tool. Hence, these few days, other than stuffing some food into her sleeves, Yun Shujo basically did not communicate with a certain someone. Di Baiming felt that her guess was right. The 9 pavilions had been dormant for many years, and they had always been ambitious to rule the entire towering sky continent. The nameless sword sect and the other 5 sects were their stumbling blocks, so they must be plotting to get rid of them. I guess this is only the first step for them. There will be other actions in the future. You just need to remind Master Ouyang from the side, said Di Baiming. Yun Shujo nodded and said in puzzlement, let's not talk about the 9 pavilions first. I feel that the Divine Devil Hall is a little strange. Why has there been no movement? They have not been so quiet in other continents. Chapter 4263 won't scare you to death. When Di Baiming heard Yun Shujia's words, he said indifferently, on one hand, your attention was attracted by the 9 pavilions, so you didn't notice the actions of the Divine Devil Hall. On the other hand, they had failed in the previous continents. This time, they naturally learned a lesson and did things more secretly. However, you don't have to worry too much. Sooner or later, you will be exposed. Yun Shujo thought about the taste of Di Baiming's words. Then, she widened her eyes and said in disbelief, You don't mean that the 9 pavilions have a relationship with the Divine Devil Hall, right? Di Baiming said noncommittally, it's hard to say. I have only found some clues, so I can't make a conclusion yet. Yun Shujo still couldn't believe it. The people of the 9 pavilions have real spiritual power. It doesn't seem like they used medicine to increase their spiritual power. Also, I've never seen them use secret techniques. How could it be related to the Divine Devil Hall? It's possible that I guessed wrong. In any case, it's good that you know. Di Biming didn't say much. After all, he didn't have any concrete evidence. Yun Shujia's emotions were a little complicated. Although she did not like Lan Luochen, she still could not believe that he had actually joined the Divine Devil Hall. After a moment of silence, Yun Shujo suddenly remembered something. Puzzled, she asked, Didn't Wu Jis head say that after you broke the seal, you became like an ice sculpture? I see that you still know how to shamelessly take advantage of me. You don't look like an ice sculpture, but more like a pervert. The small silver snake closed its eyes and pretended to be dead, not making a sound. Yun Shujo pouted. TSK, it's not because you turned into a snake that you turned into a pervert, is it? No wonder you have 2 penises. Di Biming, which eye of yours saw that I have 2 whats? Nonsense. He had an ice spirit root. The stronger his spiritual power was, the colder his temperament was. After turning into a small silver snake, his spiritual power had weakened a lot, so his temperament had changed. However, he didn't want to tell Yun Shujo, in case this little rascal became even more arrogant. Seeing that a certain one had been pretending to be dead, Yun Shujo smiled evilly and wanted to check the body of the small silver snake. The small silver snake was so scared that it directly crawled into the quilt. Hei Shinjo had a sinister smile on her face. Little rascal, I won't scare you to death. The next morning, after Hei Shinjo had breakfast, she jumped into the courtyard of Master Ouyang. Master, I've come to pay my respects to you. Master Ouyang nodded his head in gratification. It had to be said that ever since he had taken in this disciple, he felt that he had also become a few years younger. The master and disciple were chatting casually when Zhuang Hong walked in. Zhuang Hong saw that Yun Shujo wanted to strangle her to death, but he couldn't say anything because of Master Ouyang, so he could only pay his respects to Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang's attitude toward Zhuang Hong was much colder than Yun Shujia's. He was very disappointed in Zhuang Hong now, but because of the many years of master-disciple relationship, he didn't dissolve the master-disciple relationship. Master Ouyang's good mood was also gone. He waved his hand, indicating that the 2 of them could leave. Zhuang Hong and Yun Shujo walked out of Master Ouyang's courtyard one after the other. Zhuang Hong said viciously, Yun Shujo, don't be complacent. A good-for-nothing like you will be expelled from Master Ouyang sooner or later. Also, don't forget that you and I are not the same batch of disciples. Although we are both successive disciples, you are a generation lower than me. Before Zhuang Hong could say anything, Yun Shujo ran back to Master Ouyang's courtyard. Chapter 42-64 Account Book. Zhuang Hong was stunned. Then he remembered that Yun Shujo was full of bad ideas. He hesitated for a moment but still followed her. Before he got close to the living room, he heard Yun Shujia's loud voice. Master, Zhuang Hong has to address you as your brother in the future. He said that you are the big brother and he is the little brother. Zhuang Hong almost sat on the ground. This bitch was simply spouting nonsense. Master Ouyang's face darkened. What nonsense are you spouting? What a mess. Zhuang Hong also barged in at this time and said angrily, Yun Shujo, you're spouting nonsense. When have I ever said that? Yun Shujo blinked her eyes. Master, Zhuang Hong told me that he and I are not in the same batch of disciples, so we have to address him as martial uncle. Then the problem comes. You are my master, and he is my martial uncle. Then aren't you in the same generation as him? Master Ouyang was stunned. He didn't pay attention to these forms of address in the past, but now it seemed that it was a little inappropriate. However, how should he address her? Master, how about this? In any case, in the sect, only the elders and the successive disciples have a true master-disciple relationship. Then, it doesn't matter how many generations the successive disciples are, they can all address each other as the same generation. Yun Chuzhou suggested. Master Ouyang felt that it made sense. Although it was a little rough, at least it wouldn't be messy. Zhuanghong wanted to object, but he knew that he would be rebuked by Yun Chuzhou if he said it out loud. Therefore, he didn't say anything, but he had some plans in his mind. After Zhuanghong left, He Xinzhou said with a smile, Master, don't you think him quite smart? If you have anything that takes time and effort, you can teach me to do it. I guarantee that I will help you complete it beautifully. Master Ouyang glanced at Yun Chuzhou and pondered for a moment. He said, it just so happens that the account of the Spirit Stone Mine has been handed over in the next few days. If you have time, help Master check it and see if they have tampered with it. Hearing that, Yun Chuzhou curled her lips slightly. This was simply a trivial matter, so she said, no problem. Master, where is the account book? I promised to find out all the tricks in it. Master Ouyang looked at her with a complicated expression, and then, a pile of account books appeared on the ground. Yun Chuzhou looked at the small mountain of account books, and her heart was like a dog that was complaining. Old man Ouyang was just messing with her, right? Master Ouyang coughed a few times. The affairs in the sect are complicated, so the account books have been piling up in my place, and I have never had time to check them. Since you are so smart, take them back and check them slowly. He Xinzhou had already bragged, but she could not slap herself in the face. She had no choice but to put the accounts into her storage ring and return to her own yard. Looking at the mountains of accounts in the yard, she felt that her head was about to explode. As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Old man Ouyang had seen through her thoughts, so he had made such a move to show her off. She had a photographic memory, and she was extremely smart. However, with so many accounts, how long would it take to review them? Just as she was worrying, the drifters thought that these account books were new toys that Yun Chuzhou had gotten for them. They crowded around and threw the account books around, enjoying themselves. Yun Chuzhou's head was buzzing. She stomped her feet and shouted, put them down. These are not toys for you. The more He Xinzhou shouted, the more excited the drifters became. They thought it was too fucking fun. Chapter 4265. Troublemaking drifters. He Xinzhou was so angry that she almost died. However, the drifters were not afraid of her at all. The ledgers were thrown all over the yard. Fortunately, the ledgers were much stronger than the ones in the secular world, otherwise, they would definitely fall apart if they were thrown around by the drifters. He Xinzhou roared in anger, if you dare to be evil again, I won't bring you out in the future. You can put mushrooms in this yard. Hearing He Xinzhou's words, the drifters threw the books on the ground and went to play on the slide and swing. In fact, these drifters felt that they had played enough. Otherwise, Yun Chuzhou's threat would not have worked. He Xinzhou looked at the books on the ground and felt like crying. She did not need to cultivate after reading so many books. However, if she did not do it, Old man Ouyang would have even more excuses not to give her power in the future. She was really in a dilemma. It was not that He Xinzhou had not thought of hiring people to help her with the accounting, but these accounts were confidential and it was not convenient for others to handle them. Just as He Xinzhou was feeling bitter, the little silver snake said, this venerable self will audit with you. 2 people are faster than 1 person. Yun Chuzhou's eyes lit up. That's right, she still had a freeloader to feed. There was no need to use it. Therefore, He Xinzhou got Meng Yanshou and the rest to pick up the accounts books and arrange them neatly. She and Di Baiming started to audit the accounts. However, just as they started to audit the accounts, the drifters came to cause trouble. They threw the neatly arranged accounts books into the yard again. He Xinzhou was completely enraged this time. This fellow carried a large kitchen knife and chased after the drifters all over the yard. However, the drifters were not afraid of being hacked at all. They even rushed over to let her hack at them, almost causing this fellow to vomit blood in anger. A certain someone looked at Hei Shinjo, who was jumping all over the yard with doting eyes. He felt that such a lively little scoundrel was simply too cute. If Hei Shinjo knew what this person was thinking, she would definitely roast him into a dried snake. Lively my ass. She was about to die from anger. Yun Shujo chased after him for a long time and was panting tiredly. She sat on the chair and panted as she scolded, "A bunch of white-eyed fools. I will tear down the swing and the slide in a while. Let's see if they are still showing off." When those fools heard that Yun Shujo was going to tear down the swing and the slide, they immediately stopped and sneakily returned the account books to the stone table. Yun Shujo narrowed her eyes. So these white-eyed drifters were afraid of this. However, the most important thing now was to review these account books first. When there was time, she would deal with these white-eyed drifters. When Yun Shujo thought of this, she picked up an account book and began to read it. She did not need to use any abacus. After scanning it with her eyes, the basic results were out. She stole a glance at the small silver snake and realized that he was also flipping the pages very quickly. Clearly, the speed of a certain person's mental calculation was not slower than hers. The corners of the guy's mouth curled. He became competitive and sped up. However, even though the speed of mental calculation was very fast, there were too many books. It would take them at least 7 or 8 days if they didn't eat or drink. Hei Shinjo was a little impatient. She threw the books on the stone table and looked at her group of silly cuties. Then, she said, "What's the use of raising you? If you can audit the books, can I go and cultivate?" But Face, who was running crazily in the yard, said eagerly, "Little fairy, if you don't mind that I'm stupid, I can help you do it. However, I only know how to add and subtract within 10. If you include my toes, I can barely do anything below 20. I won't count any more." Yun Shujo said, "Get lost." Chapter 4266 was finally completed, but Face was not angry even though he was scolded. He said slyly, "Little fairy, although I don't know how to calculate, curly hair knows it and so does that kitten. They are all scheming people. How can they not know how to calculate?" Yun Shujia's eyes immediately lit up. She looked at Meng Yanshou and the kitten and asked, "You guys know how to read accounts?" Meng Yanshou and the cat cub hated Butt Face, who was a snitch. However, they did not dare to lie. Meng Yanshou said dryly, "Just a little." The cat cub also said weakly, "I only know a little." Yun Shujo narrowed her eyes and did not say anything. She just threw a pile of books to the two. The two of them couldn't begin to look at the books bitterly. It would be great if they could play by the side. Who would be willing to look at this stupid thing? Yun Shujo looked at them coldly. Although the nightmare beast and the kitten were slightly slower than her in debeaming, they were still much faster than the average person. As expected, they knew how to count. But Face saw Yun Shujia's cold gaze and was gloating in his heart. The kitten and curly hair had always wanted to compete for the pet. They wouldn't be able to trick the two of them to death. With the help of Meng Yanshou and Cat Cub, the speed was much faster. After 3 days, they had finally finished reviewing the pile of ledgers. Yun Shujo carefully looked at some of the connections in the ledgers. In the end, she wrote a summary of the results and eagerly went to see Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang had thrown a pile of ledgers to Yun Shujo in order to make her quit. Not to mention the position of sect master, he did not even want her to do the daily affairs. It was impossible for a female disciple to do these things. Therefore, when Master Ouyang heard that Yun Shujo had finished reviewing the books, he was shocked. Then he said with a straight face, "Little Joe, this is not a joke. If you dare to deceive me, humph." Hearing that, Yun Shujo smiled and handed a few pages to Master Ouyang. "Master, Please have a look. Master Ouyang's mouth twitched when he saw the dog-like handwriting on the pages. However, when he saw the contents, his face was full of shock. He followed the words written on the pages and randomly checked a few ledgers. He found that the flaws he pointed out were not wrong at all. Did she really finish reading all those ledgers in 3 days? Was she still human? After a long time, Master Ouyang finally came back to his senses. He said to the calm and composed He Xinjiu, "You should go back first. I will look for you if I have any questions." How could He Xinjiu leave just like that? What a joke. She had worked so hard for 3 days and was sent away just like that. In your dreams. Master, I am your last disciple after all, and I can write and calculate. You should at least arrange some errands for me, right? I think it's good enough to inspect the upper, middle, and lower court's big kitchens when I have nothing to do. What do you think? Master Ouyang was so angry that he laughed. He had seen thick-skinned people before, but this was the first time he had seen such thick-skinned people. However, he thought that this little girl was a scoundrel. If she did not agree, she might not cause any trouble. After all, the big kitchen was not involved in anything. It was not a big deal to let her interfere. Therefore, he nodded. All right, then I will hand over the 3 courts big kitchen to you to manage. If anything goes wrong, I will hold you responsible. Yun Shuzhou immediately thanked her with a smile and left with the sect leader's decree. When this fellow left Master Ouyang's courtyard, the corners of her mouth curled up. There's no rush. Simmer it slowly. Let's take it slow. Sooner or later, she will make old man Ouyang cry and beg her to be the successor of the sect leader. Chapter 4267. The Ghost Realm. He Xinjiu went to the 3rd courtyard's kitchen and pretended to guide them for an inspection. Then, she shamelessly packed a pile of delicious food and strolled back to the courtyard. The people in the 3rd courtyard's big kitchen dared not to be angry, but they did not dare to say anything. After all, this little girl was now the last disciple of the sect master. One person achieved enlightenment, and the chickens and dogs ascended to heaven. The silly cuties also followed suit, hugging the meat bones and munching happily. When Dog 2 saw the cat cub's lack of interest, it had a thought. This cat cub was the most narrow-minded. Usually, it was very protective of its food, but today, it was acting so strangely. There must be something wrong. It eagerly went to Yun Shujia's side and said, "Little fairy, I report. The cat cub is up to no good." If it didn't have something on its mind, why would it be so quiet? The kitten almost fell to the ground. It hurriedly said, "Little fairy, don't listen to its nonsense. I'm just too tired from reading the books a few days ago." Yun Shujiu narrowed her eyes. Among all these silly cuties, the one she was most worried about was this fake kitten. Although it placed its hopes on the soul transformation technique, it was hard to guarantee that it would play some tricks. When the cat cub saw Yun Shujia's cold gaze, it could not help but tremble. It stammered, I did hide something, but it's useless to say it out loud." Before Yun Shujiu could say anything, Dog 2 glared at it and said, "Whether it's useful or not, that's up to the little fairy. What's the use of saying that? Quickly tell me the truth, or I'll kill you." The kitten hated butt-face to death. However, Yun Shujiu was protecting it, and although it was useless now, it was still an ancient fierce beast. It didn't have absolute confidence in killing it, so even if it hated it to the bone, it couldn't do anything. It could only say with an embarrassed expression, "Since the little fairy wants to know, I'll just say it. I know where the blazing red glass is." "What?" Yun Shujiu suddenly stood up and held the kitten's ear and asked, "Do you know where the blazing red glazed tile is?" "Where is it?" The little silver snake, who had been resting with its eyes closed, opened its eyes and stared at the kitten with a burning gaze. The kitten was so frightened that it trembled and said, "I've also heard about it, so I don't know if it's true or not." It's rumored that the royal family of the Ghost Clan has the blazing red glazed tile. But the Ghost Clan is very fierce, and their cultivation methods are different from ours. So, it's useless even if I tell them or not. When Buttface heard about the Ghost Clan, he immediately regretted that he had said too much. He did not want to go to that kind of place again. He had scared his baby to death. Yun Shujo was at a loss. Ghost Clan? What's a Ghost Clan? Don't people have to enter reincarnation to become ghosts? Why is there a Ghost Clan? Biming explained, the Ghost Clan is just a title, not a real Ghost Clan. The place where they live is called the Ghost Territory. After the Ghost Clan left the Ghost Territory, they entered the immortal soul state. The people in the world mistook them for ghosts, so they gave them the name of the Ghost Clan. Correspondingly, other races could only enter the Ghost Territory in the immortal soul state, and the immortal soul of humans was the most fragile. Therefore, the Ghost Territory was never worried about being invaded by other races. Most importantly, the entrance to the Ghost Domain has always been hidden. Almost no one knows where it is, so the Ghost race rarely interacts with other races. Although Yun Shujo still had a lot of doubts, she finally knew most of it. She looked at Kitten and asked, "Do you know the entrance to the Ghost Domain?" A hint of schadenfreude flashed in Kitten's eyes. "I don't know, but Buttface knows that it disappeared for a few years. It is said that it was trapped in the Ghost Domain." Chapter 4268, You are the only woman that I have my eyes on. Buttface shouted in exasperation, "Nonsense. I'm not trapped there, I'm just loitering. I'm an ancient beast, how can a mere Ghost Clan trap me?" The cat cub curled his lips in disdain and did not say a word. "Little fellow, are you trying to trick me? If I can't get better, don't even think about it. We are all in the same boat." Yun Shujo looked at Dog 2's fierce appearance and curled the corners of her mouth. No wonder Dog 2 was afraid of ghosts. It was not the ghosts but the Ghost Clan that it was afraid of. However, looking at how afraid it was likely that the memories of the Ghost Realm were not very good. "Dog 2, do you know the entrance to the Ghost Realm?" Yun Shujo asked faintly. Buttface shook his head like a rattledrum. I don't know. I was muddle-headed back then and accidentally stumbled into the Ghost Domain. I didn't know where the entrance was. Besides, little fairy, the Ghost Domain isn't a place for humans to go. Spiritual energy will be suppressed there, and it's still in the primordial spirit state. In addition, those ghosts are all very cruel and abnormal. Don't be stupid. Yun Shujo knew that Buttface must know the entrance to the Ghost Realm when she saw the guilty look on his face. However, should she make such a trip? Biming said in a deep voice, "Little Joe, I'll make a trip to the Ghost Realm after my body recovers. You don't have to get involved in this matter anymore. You just need to cultivate well in the Nameless Sword sect." Before Yun Shujo could say anything, Buttface shouted, "No, Your Excellency, you can't go." This time, both Biming and Yun Shujo were stunned. They knew something from Buttface's words. Yun Shujo said coldly, "Buttface, it seems that you are hiding a lot of things from me. Tell me, what is going on?" Buttface wanted to slap himself twice. He blinked his eyes and said, "I don't know the specifics. I only know a little. If I'm wrong, you can't blame me." Yun Shujo snorted coldly. This Buttface was becoming more and more calculative. His words were becoming more and more watertight. Seeing that Yun Shujo ignored him, Buttface could only continue. The Ghost Clan and the Yen Clan had a good relationship for a period of time. Wasn't Your Excellency the lord of the Yen Clan in the past? That's why they had an acquaintance. It was said that Princess Mei Yen of the Ghost Clan admired the lord very much. She once said that she wouldn't marry anyone other than the Lord. However, after the Lord disappeared mysteriously, she didn't know whether Princess Mei Yen had married or not. Little fairy, think about it. If this lord goes to the ghost realm, wouldn't he be like a meat bun hitting a dog and never coming back? Di Biming heard Buttface's metaphor and glared at him. However, this glance had a different meaning in Yunshujia's eyes. She sneered and said, "What? Are you afraid that I will know that you have an old lover?" Di Biming rebuked coldly, "What nonsense are you talking about? Although I have lost a lot of my memories, I can swear to the heavens that from the beginning to the end, you are the only woman that I have taken a fancy to. Other women are no different from cats and dogs in my eyes." When He Xingjiu heard Di Biming's words, she felt a little better. However, when she thought about it, this pretty boy had too many secrets. There might be a few coquettish bitches jumping out one day. She had to be on high alert, in case the wife-slave that she had painstakingly groomed was taken advantage of by others. Then, the question was, should she go to the ghost realm? Chapter 42-69 Scheming Dog. While Yunshujiu was pondering, Di Biming said coldly, "Little Jiu, you should get rid of this idea as soon as possible. I will go there myself after I recover." Yunshujiu pouted and said, "What if you are set up by that whatever succubus? You are so stupid. I'm afraid that you will fall for it." Di Biming, Buttface couldn't wait for Yunshujiu not to go to the ghost realm, so he said, "Little fairy, how can you not trust your excellency? Your excellency loves you more than gold, how can you like that succubus? Although that succubus is the #1 beauty of the ghost clan, in my opinion, she can't even compare to a strand of your hair. Your excellency will never like her." Yunshujia's sense of danger grew stronger when she heard that succubus was the #1 beauty of the ghost clan. That old woman had lived for tens of thousands of years. She might have many tricks up her sleeves. No matter what, she had to go with her. Otherwise, what would happen if the pretty boy's virginity was taken away? Di Biming knew what Yunshujiu was thinking when he saw her expression. He glared at Buttface, who was not helping. He knew that Yunshujiu was fearless. No matter what, he had to calm her down first. Hence, he said, "How about this? After I recover, we will go together." Yunshujiu felt that this was a good idea, so she nodded and agreed. Buttface immediately drooped his head. He did not want to return to that nightmare-like place. However, he was now the little fairy's beast. If the little fairy wanted to go, he could only follow her. The baby really wanted to cry. Just as Buttface was feeling miserable, Yunshujiu asked, "Right, Buttface, where is the entrance to the ghost realm?" Buttface blinked his dog eyes. Although he did not want to say it, he still said, "It's far away and right in front of us. It's under the sword pool. Otherwise, where do you think these drifters came from?" The Eye of Sword Intent was also the entrance, but it was probably destroyed by those drifters. This time, not only Yunshujiu, but even Di Biming was surprised. Could these drifters have something to do with the ghost clan? Didn't they say that these were the killing aura? No wonder they could only stay in the puppet disc once they left the Eye of Sword Intent or the Nameless Sword sect. So this was the reason. Then they are the ghost clan? Yunshujiu asked in disbelief. Buttface shook his head. They shouldn't be the ghost clan. Who knows what the hell they are? They look quite similar to the killing aura. The drifters heard their conversation and immediately fluttered around, not knowing why they were so smug. Yunshujiu looked deeply at Buttface. She had thought that he was a good-for-nothing, but it turned out that he was a scheming dog who was loyal to the outside but a traitor. There must be a lot of things that he was hiding from her. When Buttface saw Yunshujiu looking at him with an unfriendly gaze, he immediately shivered. "Little fairy, it's not that I didn't want to report it. It's just that the ghost domain is too dangerous. I'm doing this for your own good." If Yunshujiu believed him, there would be a ghost. However, she could also see that this scheming dog was full of schemes. It was useless to force it. She could only take her time to deal with it. However, the entrance was much easier in the sword pool. This way, she was not afraid that Di Biming would leave her alone. That night, everything was quiet. Yun Shujo and Di Biming also entered their dreams. Because there was a murderous aura guarding the courtyard, Yun Shujo did not release stupid Meng to watch the night. The murderous aura sneaked into the bedroom. The silver snake opened its vertical pupils. However, it quickly felt dizzy and did not know anything. Chapter 4270. Heading to the ghost region, a dark light flashed past the black bead in Yun Shuji's dantian, but it disappeared in an instant and did not make any movements. Guai Chao and the Great Void Mirror seemed to have noticed the unusual movements, but the two of them did not make any movements either. The murderous aura wrapped around Yun Shujo and the small silver snake and soon disappeared from the bedroom. Their movements were mysterious, and they skillfully avoided the patrolling disciples and headed towards the sword pool. Soon, they arrived at the sword pool. What was surprising was that with their wrapping, the sword lights could not hurt Yun Shujo and the small silver snake at all. Soon, they disappeared into the sword pool. Hei Shinjo was teasing a certain lord in her dream when she suddenly had a very strange feeling. It was as if her entire person was in an ethereal state. She opened her eyes in a quiver. However, she realized that she was in a red mist. To be exact, she was surrounded by a group of drifters. What was going on? She subconsciously looked for the small silver snake. She was shocked when she saw a phantom floating beside her. She muttered to herself with a dumbfounded expression, "Am I still in a dream? Otherwise, how did this pervert become like this?" A certain being, little Joe, our primordial spirits have already left our bodies. We are both in the primordial spirit state now. Di Biming's tone carried a hint of helplessness. He woke up earlier than Yun Shujo, but he could only watch as these drifters carried him forward. However, he saw that the place where their bodies were located seemed to be a secret room, and there were even some drifters surrounding it. It should be very safe. Yun Shujo was a little confused. What did they mean by Yuanshan leaving the body? Why did Yuanshan leave the body when he was sleeping? This fellow looked at his hand and realized that it was indeed a purple phantom. Just as she was confused. But Face's fawning voice came from behind. "Little fairy, I told you that these drifters are a little strange. They are indeed very strange. They actually led us into the passage leading to the ghost realm in a daze." But Face? Yun Shujo turned around and saw an earthy yellow phantom shaking its head and wagging its tail to flatter her. Yun Shujo frowned. "I remember that I didn't let you out at night. How did you follow me?" But Face had a sullen look on his face. He didn't want to follow her either. It would be much better if he could eat and drink in the spirit beast pouch. However, these damn drifters somehow managed to get his primordial spirit out of the spirit beast pouch and even brought it along with them. After hearing what Butt Face had told her, Yun Shujo pondered for a moment. It seemed that these drifters were selective. Otherwise, they would have brought the rest of the dumb cuties along, and not just Butt Face. Now was not the time to fight with these drifters. Since they had already gone to the ghost realm, she would go there and take a look. She wanted to see what the old witch who coveted her man looked like. After thinking it through, this fellow also had the mood to relax. He smiled and said to the little silver snake, "Prince Charming, you still don't know, right? I learned a little trick in the underground of the ghost city. I'll perform it for you to relieve your boredom." A certain someone was completely speechless. What kind of time was this? He actually still had the mood to play a little trick. His heart was really big. Yun Shujo did not care about a certain someone's reaction. She removed her arms and legs. Under a certain someone's horrified gaze, she transformed into countless purple light spots and then transformed into a certain someone's appearance. Chapter 4271. Turned into a human again? A certain someone looked at Hei Shinjo, who was showing off, and the shock in his heart could not be described with words. A human's primordial spirit was extremely fragile. If it turned into a light spot like the little rascal just now, would it mean that her soul and spirit were destroyed? Not only was she fine, but she could even transform back into any form? How was this possible? Yun Shujo saw the small silver snake's dumbfounded expression and felt that she was awesome. Those shameless drifters began to show off as well. Yun Shujo secretly gritted her teeth. What did her ability have to do with them? They actually followed her and showed off as well. How shameless. Yun Shujo had enough of the small silver snake's shock and blinked her eyes. Although there shouldn't be any enemies in the ghost realm, her physique was really terrible. For safety reasons, it was better to change into another appearance. Thus, this fellow transformed into an ordinary-looking young girl. However, the edges of the phantom were different from the silver of the little silver snake and the earthen yellow of Butt-Face. Instead, it was purple. Beiming knew her intentions and agreed with her. Everything in the ghost realm was unknown. It was always right to be careful. After drifting for almost a day, a dazzling light spot finally appeared in front of them. Yun Shujo knew that they were about to reach the exit. This guy was afraid that the silver snake and Butt-Face would get separated from him, so he wrapped the silver snake around his arm and held Butt-Face in his arms. Fortunately, they were both in the primordial spirit state, so there was no difference in their actions. When Dog 2 saw the silver snake's cold gaze, it shivered. It knew that the jealous god was angry that the little fairy was hugging it. However, even if it had to risk offending a certain god, it had to hold on to the little fairy tightly and not let go. The ghost domain was such a terrifying place. If it did not follow the little fairy, it would be very miserable. Finally, the drifters brought 3 of them to the exit, and a blinding light was emitted. When Yun Shujo regained her sight, she realized that she had become a human again. She pinched herself and grimaced in pain. Had she really become a human? Then, she looked at the clothes on her body. It was completely the same clothes that she had transformed into previously. It was simply too magical. Then, she looked at the little silver snake and Butt-Face on the ground beside her. They were almost exactly the same as before. However, the figures of the drifters had disappeared. Could it be that they did not follow them out? At this moment, Butt-Face said eagerly, "Little fairy, do you find it very strange? This is easy to understand. The members of the ghost clan turned into ghosts when they came to our side, so we turned into humans when we came to their side." Although Butt-Face said it in a roundabout way, Yun Shujo also understood what he meant. It was nothing more than talking about the ghost realm, where the primordial spirit turned into a corporeal body. Due to a certain god's memory loss, he also felt that this experience was very fresh. However, he was not as obvious as Yun Shujo. Because she no longer had a storage ring on her body, Yun Shujo could not see her own appearance now. She asked, "Prince Charming, do I look like my original appearance after I'm easily transformed?" Beiming said, "It's your transformed appearance. But why is there a red mole between your brows?" Yun Shujo could not see it without a mirror. She said casually, "I guess I didn't notice it when I transformed. I'll see if I can transform into something else." Yun Shujo tried the previous method. Her body actually turned into purple smoke and then transformed into Shue Wuji's appearance. However, there was still a red mole between her eyebrows that was as red as blood. Chapter 4272, Dog 2's elemental energy level. Yun Shujo once again reverted to her original appearance and frowned. She had a guess. Could this damnable red dot be those drifters? When these damnable drifters were in the Nameless Sword sect, they always wanted to make her frown. Now, she finally got what she wanted. However, now was not the time to bicker with them. The important matter was still more important. Yun Shujo tried to use her spiritual power and found that her spiritual power had been suppressed to the 8th level of the spirit enhancement realm. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Spirit enhancement? How far away was this level? Wasn't it so weak that she could not even summon Dehua? She tried to summon Dehua. Not to mention Dehua, she could not even summon a small purple needle. This guy felt a little uncertain. He could not use the big kitchen knife, Dehua, and those stupid cuties. His spiritual power had been suppressed to the level of the spirit enhancement realm, and he had 2 free food beside him. His future was bleak. A certain god did not know that he had been treated as free food by Hei Shinjo. He looked a little annoyed and tried to summon an ice dragon. Soon, an ice dragon appeared in front of the 2 of them. Hei Shinjo saw the ice dragon and widened her eyes. She asked, "Prince Charming, what level is your spiritual power suppressed to?" "I'm only at the 8th level of the spirit enhancement level now." The ghost realm is indeed very strong in suppressing spiritual power. But fortunately, at least I can still release the ice dragon. It's just that using it once will consume a lot of spiritual power, Di Baiming said in a deep voice. Yun Shujo was so angry that she was speechless. This was a blatant discrimination. Why could a gigolo be able to use a spiritual beast when they were both at the 8th level of the spirit enhancement realm? Why couldn't she? Oh right, it seemed that when they were in the Qingxian continent, the gigolo's spiritual power was also suppressed. But he could also use a spiritual beast. It was really fucking unfair. This guy pouted and ignored Di Baiming. Instead, he carefully observed the surrounding environment. She had roughly scanned the area before and realized that this was a wilderness. It did not look any different from the towering sky continent. It was just that it was remote and desolate. Buttface, do you know where this is? Buttface narrowed his dog eyes and said, "The ghost domain has many such wilderness, so I can't tell where this is. However, the yuan qi here is very thin. It's most likely the base domain." Dog 2 saw that Yun Shujo and the small silver snake were somewhat confused. It explained, "The ghost race cultivates not spirit energy but yuan qi. Yuan qi is extremely important to them, so they divided the ghost domain into 3 regions: base domain, flat domain, and imperial domain. The base domain mainly lives in the commoners, while the flat domain lives in the commoners and a portion of the commoners who are servants. The imperial domain is the aristocratic families and the imperial family. Yun Shujo asked curiously, "It's easy to understand the aristocratic families and the imperial family. What's the difference between commoners and commoners? And according to what classification?" Dog 2 looked at Yun Shujo sympathetically. "According to the classification of elemental energy, little fairy, you don't have a single trace of elemental energy at the moment, so you are definitely a lowly commoner. If you want to get close to the imperial family and obtain the blazing red glaze tile, the most important thing is to increase your elemental energy. Otherwise, not to mention going to the imperial region, even surviving is a problem." Yun Shujo glanced at it. "From what I hear, you have elemental energy." Dog 2 immediately said smugly, "No matter what, I was once trapped in this ghost domain. Yes, I roamed around for hundreds of years. In the end, I didn't even put the royal family in my eyes, let alone the commoners. It's just that my soul has only recovered a little, so, speak human language. So there's not much elemental energy left. Cough, cough. It's only at the level of a rank 3 origin beast, which is equivalent to the 3rd level of the ghost clan," Buttface said guiltily. Chapter 4273, Gopher Hunting. Although Yun Shujo did not know the level of elemental energy, seeing the guilty look on Dog 2's face, she knew that it was most likely the lowest level of elemental energy. After asking, it was indeed the lowest level of elemental energy. Yun Shujo asked Dog 2 about the cultivation method of elemental energy. "Little fairy, you are a human, and I am a beast. this cultivation method is different. If you want to learn how to cultivate elemental energy, you can only buy some cultivation books or find someone to teach you. However, it is very difficult to get started. I reckon that you and your majesty will need a long time to catch up to me. Seeing that a certain lord and Hei Shinjo did not have elemental energy at the moment and that he was the most powerful, Dog 2 could not help but feel a little smug. Yun Shujo frowned. Whether it was buying books or finding someone to teach, the most important thing was to have money first. No matter what currency was here, she did not have a single cent. Her gaze landed on Dog 2. Dog 2, when we reach the town, I will sell you for some money. After that, you can think of a way to run back. But face, you'll lose your baby if you act like this. Of course, Yun Shujo was trying to scare Buttface so that he wouldn't think that she had elemental energy and act all smug. A certain deity naturally knew what Yun Shujo was thinking and said cooperatively, "This idea is not bad. Although it doesn't have much use, it's not a bad idea to let people buy it to eat meat." But Face was so scared that he was about to cry. His ears and tail immediately drooped as he said with a sobbing tone, "Little fairy, I was wrong. I shouldn't be so smug. I'll definitely tuck my tail between my legs and become a dog again in the future." Yun Shujo curled her lips. "It's fine if you don't sell it. Think of a way to earn money. If you can't think of one, I'll have to sell you." But Face thought bitterly for a while, then, he said, "I remember that there's a type of sword-toothed gopher in this wilderness. It's only a rank 1 origin beast, which is equivalent to the first layer of the ghost clan. Although it's not very valuable, it can be exchanged for some money. Why don't we capture some and sell them for money?" Yun Shujo had no other choice but to bitterly follow Buttface and start catching gopher. Buttface found a palm-sized hole with familiarity and said to Yun Shujo, "Little fairy, you stay here. I'll go to another hole and release my elemental energy. It will run out from this hole. You just need to catch it." After seeing Yun Shujo nod, Buttface ran to a hole in the distance and began to release his elemental energy into the hole. He also used his claws to dig a hole. After the sword-toothed gopher was frightened, it panicked and wanted to escape from the other hole. However, it was caught by Yun Shujo. The sword-toothed gopher was in a hurry to escape. Its sharp long teeth bit towards Yun Shujo's finger. Yun Shujo hurriedly raised her spirit energy shield. The spirit energy barrier was torn into pieces by the scimitar-toothed hamster's sharp teeth. Fortunately, at this time, Buttface jumped over and bit the scimitar-toothed hamster's throat. The scimitar-toothed hamster's neck tilted and it died. Yun Shujo frowned. It seemed that the first level of the original level was higher than the 8th level of the spirit enhancement. Her and the pretty boy's spirit energy was not enough. Moreover, they did not dare to use their spirit energy in front of outsiders. Therefore, the most important thing was to quickly cultivate their elemental energy. Following that, Yun Shujo and Buttface worked together to catch more than a dozen saber-toothed gophers. When they felt that it was about time, they identified the direction and walked towards the edge of the wilderness. Yun Shujo said with a faint smile, "Buttface, I see that you have a lot of mouse-catching skills. You caught quite a lot of these things before, right?" Chapter 4274. The dog gets the mouse. Buttface stammered and didn't say anything. When he thought of the miserable days when he got the mouse, he felt that this was the biggest dark history in his life. Back then, he accidentally bumped into the ghost realm, and his spiritual power was suppressed. In order to not starve to death, he could only use these sword-toothed gophers to satisfy his hunger. If it weren't for his strong body as a fierce beast, he would have died in this ghost realm long ago. Yun Shujo saw that Dog 2 was drooping its head, so she did not continue to tease it. Instead, she said slyly to a certain venerable, "Prince Charming, do you have any thoughts about revisiting this old place? Soon, you will see Princess Mayenne. Are you excited?" This venerable one does not remember anything, so it is not a revisiting of the old place. You don't have to test this venerable one anymore. This venerable one's taste is not that bad. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can be compared to this venerable one, the venerable one said coldly. When Yun Shujo saw that a certain venerable one had even come out with a venerable one, she knew that he was angry. She hurriedly said, all right. I won't mention it. I care about you, right? If you were snatched away by someone, my heart would be broken into 108 pieces. Hearing Yun Shuji's words, the certain venerable one was clearly very pleased. He felt that the entire snake was very comfortable. But Face secretly curled his lips. It was really mushy. Moreover, what he thought was simple. He did not have any essence energy at the moment. How could he still dream of entering the Imperial region? Wishful thinking. Of course, this fellow only dared to think about it in his heart, but he did not dare to say it out loud. Perhaps it was because the resources in the wilderness were too scarce. Yun Shujo did not encounter any other essence beasts as she walked all the way to the edge of the wilderness. All she could see was a bumpy dirt road. Both sides were filled with rubble and sand, making it very desolate. Little fairy, it seems like my judgment is correct. This is indeed the scum domain, Dog 2 said as it looked at the situation on both sides of the dirt road. It's good that it's the scum domain. After all, I don't have any origin energy now. If I were to go to the other two domains, I'm afraid I won't be able to save my life, Yun Shujo said indifferently. Dog 2 curled its lips. Little fairy, you just happen to be wrong. At the very least, the Ping domain and the Imperial domain still had law enforcement teams and order. However, there were no laws and restrictions in the scum domain. They adhered to the principle of the strong preying on the weak. It was very normal to rob and kill people on the streets. Therefore, you should seek your own fortune. Yun Shujo frowned. She was currently as weak as a piece of trash. If she really encountered a villain, forget about protecting the pretty boy and Dog 2, she might not even be able to protect herself. However, if she did not enter the town and had no way to cultivate elemental energy, she would really be in a dilemma. But Face saw Yun Shuji's worry and said, Little fairy, the elemental energy of the commoners in the towns near the wilderness is usually very low, only around the 3rd level of the Yuanshu realm. With me protecting you, you don't have to be afraid. Little Joe, if they are only at the 3rd level of the Yuanshu realm, I can release the ice dragon at the critical moment to let us escape. It shouldn't be a problem for you to be careful. Even though Buttface and D. Biming said so, Yun Shujo still felt that it wasn't very safe. She blinked her eyes and transformed into a burly man. Then, she said in a muffled voice, it should be better this way. Let's go. When Buttface saw the red mole between the burly man's eyebrows, he couldn't help but stagger. Wasn't this scene too sour and refreshing? Yun Shujo also slowly recalled the red mole between her eyebrows. She simply smeared some saber-toothed rat blood on her forehead, so that others would think that it was accidentally stained with blood. Chapter 4275, Man Town. Buttface reminded, Little fairy, men and women's elemental energy auras are different. If the other party's elemental energy level is 5 levels higher than yours, they will be able to tell your actual gender. So, it's fine here. If we go somewhere else, it's better for you to pretend to be a woman. Yun Shujo was stunned. There was such a saying? What if I turn into a stone? What if I turn into grass? Buttface's face was stiff. I've never heard of such a situation. I guess no one would believe that a person can turn into a stone or grass. Yun Shuji's eyes immediately lit up. If she really encountered danger, she could completely transform into a tree or grass. She could definitely escape this disaster. The most urgent matter at hand was to buy the spirit beast pouch used by the Ghost Clan. This way, when she was escaping for her life, she could keep Buttface. As for the pretty boy, he was small anyway, so she could just randomly stuff him anywhere. After thinking up to this point, Yun Chujia's mood became a little better. She hummed a little tune as she led Butt-Face forward. After walking for some distance, they sparsely met a few people. Although those people were puzzled that Yun Chujio did not have any origin energy undulations on her body, seeing her valiant figure and bringing along a third-level origin beast, no one dared to go up and provoke her, so they were fine. Yun Chujio saw that those people's bodies were filled with a bloody and brutal aura, and she was even more convinced of Butt-Face's words. These lowlifes probably really did not have any rules to speak of, completely relying on their fierce fighting. After walking for half a day, she saw a town in the distance. There were 2 crooked words written on it, Man Town. However, rather than calling it a town, it was more appropriate to call it a village. It was really too small and too dilapidated. Even so, there were still 2 men with grassroots holding knives guarding the entrance. When they saw people with low elemental energy, they would blackmail them. If they couldn't hand over the things, they would be beaten up. Yun Chujio frowned and gave off a brutal and fierce aura as she swaggered towards the entrance. The 2 men exchanged a glance and wanted to go forward to stop her. However, they were frightened by Yun Chujio's aura. When they saw Dog 2's fierce little eyes, they did not dare to go forward. Yun Chujio walked in front of the 2 men and stopped. The 2 men jumped in fright. They thought that Yun Chujio was looking for trouble and immediately became vigilant. They did not expect Yun Chujio to only stop for a moment before continuing to walk forward. The 2 of them only heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Yun Chujio walk a distance away. They said, that person's aura was really frightening, but there seemed to be no elemental energy undulations on his body. What's going on? I heard that if the elemental energy is too much higher than ours, we won't be able to see the other party's cultivation level. I reckon that person's elemental energy is much higher than ours. Didn't you see that the origin beast beside him is already at the 3rd level of the origin core realm? So that's how it is. Fortunately, we didn't offend him. When Yun Chujio heard the conversation between the 2, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up. She had to say that the new skill she learned underground in Ghost City was still very useful. Yun Chujio raised her eyes and looked over. This barbarian town was really dilapidated. There were practically no decent shops on either side of the road. Instead, there were many crooked thatched huts. There were also very few pedestrians on the road. Occasionally, she would see a few people who were also men. There were almost no women or children. Butt-Face sent a voice transmission, "Little fairy, did you see that? Women and children don't dare to go out on the street. If they are not careful, they will be robbed and sold for money. The lowly domain is very barbaric." Before Yun Chujio could reply, she heard someone behind her shout fiercely, "Stop! What are you trying to do by disguising as a man?" Chapter 4276 was too beautiful. Yun Chujio's heart jolted. She secretly cursed Butt-Face for being unreliable. Didn't they say that the people here were only around the 3rd level of Yuanshu? How could a person who ran out now be able to tell that she was a woman disguised as a man? She had no choice. She had already been seen through by others. It was useless to blame Butt-Face. She could only brace herself and turn around. She saw a middle-aged man standing opposite her. There were deep and shallow scars on the middle-aged man's face. It seemed that he often fought with others. That person was sizing up Yun Chujio with an inquisitive look. Yun Chujio thought to herself, since this person was able to see through her gender, her origin energy was at least at the 5th level of the origin realm and above. It definitely wouldn't work if she tried to force it. She still had to use her wits. Thus, this fellow put on a delicate and pitiful posture and said, "Because my head is too beautiful, Mother has instructed me from a young age to better disguise myself as a man when I come out. Otherwise, people will covet my beauty. That middle-aged man looked at Yun Chujia's ferocious face and revealed a bashful expression. He almost vomited. He was still worried that others would covet her just like that. Even a blind man wouldn't fancy her, all right? The middle-aged man adjusted it for a while before continuing to ask, I don't see any elemental energy undulations on your body. Can't you cultivate? When I was 5 years old, my mother went missing, so no one taught me how to cultivate. I could only rely on catching these saber-toothed gophers to live. When the middle-aged man heard this, he thought to himself, no wonder her mother said that she was beautiful. It turned out that she was referring to before the age of 5. However, looking at her current appearance, she wasn't much better looking before the age of 5. However, he suddenly thought of something, and his eyes immediately lit up. He said, I can teach you to cultivate, but the premise is that you have to join our wolf-killing hunting group and become a slave. Every month, we will pay you 300 low-grade yuan coins. Yun Shujio was confused. What the hell was the wolf-killing hunting group? And she was even allowed to become a slave? Dog 2 transmitted his voice, Little Fairy, the hunting group is an organization formed by low-class commoners with slightly higher elemental energy levels. They divide their work and hunt some high-level elemental beasts. This way, they can obtain more yuan coins, which is also beneficial for increasing elemental energy. They are low-class commoners themselves. Even if they say that they want you to become a slave, they won't establish any contract. You just have to agree. Once you learn the cultivation method, you can just run away. Yun Shujio felt that what Butt-Face said made sense. She was penniless now and had 2 free meals with her, so she naturally couldn't let go of such a good opportunity. However, in order to conform to the impression she had just created, this guy covered his chest with his hand. He asked shyly, You don't fancy me, do you? Whether it's a slave or a daughter-in-law, I'm willing to do it. The small silver snake in Yun Chujia's sleeve pocket was so angry that it almost exploded. Even if it was acting, he didn't feel comfortable listening to it. He felt uncomfortable, and the middle-aged man was even more uncomfortable. If he didn't try his best to suppress it, he would have vomited long ago. Well, you're thinking too much. Our wolf hunting group just wants to find a servant to cook for us. Since you're willing, come with me. Yun Shujio said hesitantly, Can you lend me some money first and deduct it from my salary? I want to buy a essence beast bag. That person looked at Butt-Face who was beside Yun Shujio impatiently. He frowned and said, Although a third-grade essence beast is not bad here, your essence beast is obviously a hybrid, a breed, and a dog. It's not valuable. Why not just kill it and eat its meat? Why waste money to buy a essence beast bag? Mixed breed dog? Butt-Face nearly fainted from anger. He was an ancient fierce beast, but he was actually treated as a mixed breed dog. Damn it, I just can't beat him. Otherwise, I'll kill him. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.